You found the Stealth Podcast. Tonight, we'll travel through dark and lonely stories. Where in the world are you watching from? What time is it there? Subscribe and leave your like to support us. Let's begin. My name is Nathan Reeves, and I'm 32 years old. I've been living in Seattle for the past decade, working as a freelance photographer specializing in nature and landscapes. 6 months ago, I decided to invest my savings into converting a 2015 Mercedes Sprinter into my mobile home and office. The freedom to chase the perfect shot while carrying my life with me seemed like the ultimate dream. The van conversion took 3 months of hard work. I installed solar panels on the roof, a compact kitchen with a propane stove, a comfortable full-size bed platform with storage underneath, and a small bathroom area with a portable toilet. My pride and joy was the workstation I built near the sliding door, where I could edit photos while enjoying whatever view I'd parked in front of that day. My first few months on the road were everything I'd hoped for. I drove down the Pacific coast, capturing misty mornings and fiery sunsets, meeting fellow nomads at campgrounds, and enjoying the liberating feeling of having no fixed address. The Vanlife community had been welcoming, sharing secret spots and valuable tips about where to park overnight without issues. Last week, I decided to explore Oregon's natural beauty. The state's diverse landscapes, from dense forests to rugged coastlines, promised countless opportunities for stunning photographs. I'd been following the weather patterns, hoping to capture the mystical fog that often blankets Oregon's forests this time of year. After spending a couple of days shooting around Mount Hood, I decided to head west toward the coast, planning to take my time and explore some off-the-beaten-path locations along the way. That's how I found myself driving down a narrow, winding road through Tillamook State Forest as the afternoon light was fading. The dense woods created a tunnel of green, with sunlight filtering through the canopy in golden shafts. I pulled over several times to capture the play of light and shadow, losing track of time as I often do when I'm in my creative zone. By the time I packed up my equipment, dusk was settling, and I realized I needed to find a place to park for the night soon. I consulted my Vanlife app, which showed no designated camping areas nearby. My fuel gauge was getting low, not critically so, but enough that I didn't want to drive aimlessly. That's when I spotted a small dirt road branching off from the main one, partially hidden by overgrowth. It looked like it might lead to a clearing where I could park discreetly for the night, a perfect stealth camping spot. The narrow path was rougher than I expected, branches scraping against the sides of my van as I maneuvered through. After about half a mile, the road opened into a small clearing surrounded by towering Douglas firs. An old wooden sign was barely visible among the vegetation. Whisper Creek Logging Camp, private property. The sign looked weathered and ancient. This place had clearly been abandoned for decades. As I parked and stepped outside to stretch my legs, a peculiar silence enveloped me. No bird calls, no rustling of animals in the underbrush, just the occasional creak of branches in the gentle evening breeze. Something about the stillness felt unnatural, but I dismissed it as my city dweller instincts being overly sensitive to the deep forest quiet. I had no idea that this decision to park here would be the beginning of the most terrifying experience of my life. I set up camp as usual, extending my small awning, preparing a simple dinner of pasta on my propane stove, and editing the day's photos on my laptop. The forest darkness was absolute, my solar-powered lights creating a small bubble of comfort in the vast blackness. As I worked, I noticed my cell signal was completely gone, not unusual in remote areas, but always slightly unsettling when you're alone in the wilderness. Around midnight, I settled into bed, drawing the blackout curtains and locking the doors, a habit I developed for both privacy and security. The silence outside seemed to press against the van walls, interrupted only by the occasional creaking of the van's metal as it cooled in the night air. Sleep came quickly after my long day of hiking and photography. I bolted awake at 3:17 a.m., the digital clock on my small shelf glowing red in the darkness. Something had disturbed my sleep, though I wasn't immediately sure what. Then I heard it again, a metallic scraping sound, like something being dragged across the forest floor. My first thought was wildlife, perhaps a deer or bear investigating the clearing. I'd encountered curious animals before in my travels. The sound came closer, now accompanied by what seemed like low murmuring. Multiple voices, though I couldn't make out any words. My heart rate quickened as I realized this wasn't wildlife. There were people outside my van in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m. I lay perfectly still, straining to hear, wondering if they were other campers who had gotten lost, or perhaps locals who knew I was trespassing on private property. The voices circled my van slowly, and I caught fragments of conversation. Been abandoned since '87, and shouldn't be here. The speakers seemed to be deliberately keeping their voices low. I carefully reached for my phone to try calling for help, forgetting momentarily about the lack of service. As I fumbled in the dark, my elbow knocked against the metal cup sitting on my bedside shelf, sending it clattering to the floor with a sound that seemed deafening in the silent night. The voices outside immediately stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the mysterious sounds had been. I held my breath, my body frozen with tension. After what felt like an eternity, a sharp knock came on the side door of my van, causing me to jump. "We know you're in there," a raspy voice called out. "This isn't a safe place to stay." My options seemed limited: ignore them and hope they'd leave, or confront the situation. Against my better judgment, I decided to respond. "I'm just passing through," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll be gone at first light." The response was immediate and chilling. A burst of laughter from multiple throats, followed by that same raspy voice saying, "Nobody leaves Whisper Creek that easily." I peered through a small gap in my curtains and saw shadowy figures moving around the clearing. They appeared to be dressed in work clothes, flannel shirts, and jeans that looked oddly outdated. One figure stood directly in the beam of my van's exterior motion light, and I stifled a gasp. Despite the man's solid appearance, the light seemed to pass partially through him, giving him a translucent quality that defied explanation. His face was gaunt, with hollow eyes fixed directly on my window, as if he could see me watching. A terrible realization began to dawn on me. These weren't trespassers or locals. They were something altogether different. The translucent figure raised his hand toward my van, his hollow eyes never leaving mine despite the curtain between us. "You parked on the old logging road," he said, his voice now clear enough that it seemed to come from inside my van rather than outside. "The same road where the trucks went down in '87. 37 men lost, crushed or drowned when the creek flooded." His hand pressed against my window, leaving no condensation despite the cool night air. My throat constricted with fear as I processed his words. The abandoned logging camp sign suddenly made sense. This wasn't just any private property, but the site of what must have been a devastating accident. The other figures began to emerge from the shadows, each with the same translucent quality, some bearing horrific injuries, crushed limbs, disfigured faces, bodies bent at unnatural angles. "We don't get many visitors," another voice chimed in, this one belonging to a shorter figure whose lower body seemed to disappear into mist at the knees. "Those who come never understand what they've stumbled into until it's too late." They began to circle my van again, their movements becoming more agitated. One of them passed directly through my solar panel mounting, confirming my horrifying suspicion. These weren't living people. I scrambled to the driver's seat, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip my keys. The engine roared to life, headlights cutting through the darkness to reveal at least a dozen figures now surrounding my van. Their forms flickered in the light, some momentarily showing the full extent of their fatal injuries before returning to their more human appearance. I threw the van into reverse, tires spinning on the forest floor as I attempted to back out the way I'd come in. The van lurched backwards several feet before grinding to a sudden halt, as if it had hit something solid. The impact threw me forward against the steering wheel, momentarily dazing me. When I recovered and looked in my mirrors, I saw nothing behind me that could have stopped a 3-ton vehicle so abruptly. I shifted to drive and pressed the accelerator, but the van refused to move in any direction, as if anchored to the ground by invisible forces. The temperature inside plummeted, my breath suddenly visible in clouds of condensation. The windows began to frost over from the inside, intricate patterns spreading across the glass with unnatural speed. Through the forming ice, I could see the figures drawing closer, their expressions a mixture of malice and something that looked disturbingly like hunger. 37 years we've been trapped here, the first figure said, now standing directly in front of my immobilized van. The anniversary is tonight. We need a 38th to complete the circle and free the rest of us." The implications of his words sent a wave of nausea through me. They weren't just trying to scare me away, they wanted something far worse. I frantically tried the engine again, pumping the gas pedal and turning the key repeatedly as the starter motor whined in protest. On the third attempt, the engine caught with a roar that momentarily drowned out the murmuring voices outside. A gap appeared in the circle of figures. Perhaps they couldn't maintain their formation while exerting whatever force had held my van in place. I cranked the wheel and accelerated toward the opening, feeling resistance like driving through deep mud, but the van began to move. Something heavy landed on my roof with a thunderous impact, denting the metal inward directly above my head. Fingers, or what looked like fingers but felt like ice-cold metal hooks, began to pry at the edges of my roof vent. The sealed rubber gasket gave way with a sound like tearing flesh, and a rush of freezing air poured into the van along with a whispered chorus of voices. "Join us, 38th. Join us beneath the creek." I knew I was fighting for my life now. The fingers prying at my roof vent were making progress, the opening widening as the freezing air swirled inside my van. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, swerving wildly through the clearing toward the narrow exit path. The weight on my roof shifted, and I heard what sounded like nails dragging across metal as the entity tried to maintain its grip. My headlights illuminated the forest path ahead, narrower than I remembered, and now lined with more translucent figures, their arms outstretched. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, forcing myself to focus on the path despite the chaos around me. The van's sides scraped against trees as I navigated the tight passage, each impact jarring my already frayed nerves. Through my rearview mirror, I could see the clearing becoming engulfed in an unnatural blue glow, the figures converging and flowing like water in my direction. The temperature inside the van continued to drop precipitously. Ice crystals formed on the dashboard and steering wheel, and my breath came in visible, painful gasps. The digital displays flickered and died as the electrical system struggled against whatever force was affecting it. Only the headlights remained functioning, their beams seeming to be absorbed by the darkness rather than penetrating it. A loud crack from above told me the roof vent had finally given way. Ghostly hands plunged through the opening, grasping at the air inches from my head. I ducked instinctively, nearly losing control of the van as it bounced over exposed roots and rocks. One cold hand managed to graze my shoulder, and the brief contact sent images flooding into my mind. Dark waters rising, the screams of trapped men, timber and equipment crashing down as the earth gave way beneath a raging torrent. The narrow path seemed to stretch on impossibly long. I'd only driven half a mile to reach the clearing, but the return journey felt endless. My fuel gauge dropped rapidly, faster than normal consumption could explain. The engine coughed and sputtered, struggling against both the rough terrain and whatever supernatural force was draining it. Just as I spotted the main road ahead, the engine died completely. Momentum carried the van forward another 30 feet before it rolled to a stop, still shy of the forest road by about 20 yards. Through the trees behind me, I could see the blue glow advancing, flowing between trunks like luminescent fog. The figures were no longer walking but moving like a single entity, a wave of ghostly energy pursuing me. I abandoned the van, grabbing only my phone and keys before throwing open the door and sprinting toward the main road. The forest floor was treacherous in the dark, roots and underbrush threatening to trip me with every step. Behind me, I heard my van's metal frame groaning as if under enormous pressure. A glance over my shoulder showed the vehicle being enveloped by the blue mist, its shape distorting as if being crushed by invisible forces. I reached the paved road and ran without direction, simply trying to put distance between myself and the logging camp. The physical exertion warmed my body slightly, counteracting the bone-deep chill left by my encounter. After what must have been half a mile, I finally stopped to catch my breath and check my phone. Still no signal, but the screen came to life, casting a faint glow on my surroundings. The road stretched empty in both directions, dark forest pressing in on either side. In the distance behind me, I could see the blue glow had stopped advancing at the edge of the forest road, as if contained by some boundary. The figures stood at the tree line, their hollow eyes watching me. The rasping voice somehow carried to me despite the distance. Running only delays it. 38th. The circle remains open. We'll be waiting when you return for what's yours. I knew they meant my van, my home, containing everything I owned in the world. As I turned and continued walking along the dark road, hoping to find help or at least cell service, I couldn't shake the certainty that this nightmare was far from over. I walked for over an hour along the deserted forest road, jumping at every sound in the darkness. Eventually, I spotted headlights approaching, the first sign of another human being since my ordeal began. I flagged down the pickup truck, driven by an elderly man who introduced himself as Ray, a local forester. He was skeptical of my story, but kind enough to offer me a ride to the nearest town. As dawn broke, we reached Tillamook, where I finally had cell service. I called the police, struggling to explain what had happened without sounding completely unhinged. I settled on reporting that vandals had attacked my van at an abandoned logging camp, forcing me to flee. The officer took my statement with visible skepticism, but agreed to accompany me back to retrieve my vehicle. Ray offered to join us, his curiosity evidently outweighing his doubt. Been working these forests for 40 years, he told me as we drove back with the police cruiser following. Heard stories about Whisper Creek, but always thought they were just that, stories. When I asked what stories, his expression darkened. Bad accident in 1987. Logging operation built too close to the creek bed. When the spring floods came, it washed everything away. Some bodies were never recovered. We reached the turnoff to the logging road, which looked deceptively ordinary in the morning light. The police officer, a young man named Deputy Collins, led the way, with Ray and me following in his truck. The narrow path seemed less menacing with sunlight filtering through the trees, though my hands still trembled at the memory of what had transpired hours earlier. The clearing appeared ahead, and my heart sank. My van was still there, but it was barely recognizable. The once pristine white exterior was crushed inward from all sides, as if it had been gripped by a giant hand. The roof had partially collapsed, and every window was shattered. The metal frame was twisted in ways that no ordinary collision could explain. Deputy Collins circled the wreckage, confusion evident in his expression. "This doesn't look like vandalism," he said, running his hand over the distorted driver's side door. "More like it was compacted somehow." He radioed for a tow truck while I stood in shock, realizing everything I owned was destroyed. Ray had wandered to the edge of the clearing, examining the old sign. "This is strange," he called over. According to the records, this particular camp was abandoned in the 50s, decades before the flood disaster. He pointed at the ground near his feet. "And look here, fresh excavation marks." Deputy Collins and I joined him, looking at what appeared to be recently disturbed soil extending from the tree line toward where my van had been parked. The deputy knelt, brushing away some surface debris, then suddenly recoiled. "There's something here," he said, using his pen to carefully move aside more dirt. A piece of fabric emerged, old, rotted denim, attached to what was unmistakably a human bone. Deputy Collins immediately called for backup and a forensic team. Within hours, the quiet clearing had become a crime scene. As investigators carefully excavated the area, they discovered human remains, not from 1987, but fresh burials. The full horror of the situation emerged over the following days. Beneath the innocent-looking clearing, investigators discovered the remains of 37 people, hikers, campers, and travelers who had disappeared in the area over the past 3 decades. Each had vanished without a trace, their vehicles and belongings never recovered. My van had been parked directly above what appeared to be a recently dug plot, what would have been the 38th grave. Further investigation revealed a disturbing connection. Ray's colleague at the forestry department, checking historical records, discovered that exactly 37 loggers had died in the 1987 flood. The owner of the logging operation, a man named Victor Haskins, had survived but disappeared shortly afterward. Locals recalled him as eccentric, heavily interested in occult practices. The most chilling discovery came from a leather-bound journal found buried with the most recent victim. It contained entries written by Haskins, detailing his belief that sacrificing 38 souls, one for each dead logger plus himself, would somehow bind the spirits to him, granting him unnatural longevity. The journal ended with an entry dated just 3 weeks earlier. The 37th has joined our circle. I await only the final soul to complete what I began so long ago. I gave my final statement to the county sheriff, who now believed my account of supernatural events might have been a traumatic response to narrowly escaping a very real human killer. They theorized that I had interrupted Haskins, now an elderly man who must be living somewhere nearby, while he prepared my grave, and the attack on my van was his attempt to prevent my escape. As I boarded a bus back to Seattle 2 days later, having lost everything but my life, I glanced at the newspaper on the seat next to me. A small article caught my eye. Elderly man found dead in forest cabin. The report stated that a 78-year-old man, tentatively identified as Victor Haskins, had been discovered in a remote cabin 5 miles from Whisper Creek. The cause of death was listed as hypothermia, despite the cabin being well heated. Most disturbingly, his body showed signs of having been dead for at least 30 years, though he had been seen alive in town just days earlier. I still wake up at 3:17 every morning, the exact time I was awakened in my van. In those moments between sleep and consciousness, I sometimes hear a whisper. The circle remains open, 38th. We're still waiting. I'll never return to Oregon, but I can't shake the feeling that whatever I encountered at Whisper Creek isn't finished with me yet. My name is Eliza Donovan, and I'm 29 years old. I've been living in Portland for most of my life, working as a wildlife biologist specializing in wolf populations. 3 months ago, I decided to take a sabbatical from my research position at the university to pursue a long-time dream, converting a 2018 Ford Transit into a mobile research station and living space. The idea was to spend 6 months tracking wolf packs across different territories while documenting their behaviors in a more immersive way than traditional research methods allowed. The van conversion took every penny of my savings and countless hours of YouTube tutorials. I installed a compact solar system, a small lab area with storage for my equipment, a pull-out bed that converted to a dining space during the day, and enough water capacity to last a week off-grid. My pride and joy was the custom roof rack that housed not only additional solar panels, but also my specialized wildlife cameras and satellite internet antenna, essential for uploading data and staying connected in remote areas. I'd been on the road for just over a month, gradually making my way from northeastern Oregon's Eagle Cap Wilderness toward the Cascade Range, following reported wolf sightings and collecting data along the way. The freedom was intoxicating. Waking up surrounded by wilderness, working on my own schedule, and being closer to the animals I dedicated my career to studying than ever before. Last Tuesday, I received coordinates from a fellow researcher about potential wolf activity near the abandoned mining town of Elkhorn in the Blue Mountains. It was a detour from my planned route, but the possibility of documenting a previously untracked pack was too tempting to pass up. I programmed the location into my GPS and headed south on increasingly remote Forest Service roads. The late afternoon sun filtered through the dense pine forest as I navigated the rutted dirt roads, my transit suspension groaning in protest at the rough terrain. I'd upgraded the vehicle with all-terrain tires and a modest lift kit, but these roads were testing its limits. After 3 hours of slow, careful driving, I realized I wouldn't reach my destination before nightfall. I consulted my maps and spotted a small clearing about 2 miles ahead that looked like it might offer enough space to park for the night. As I rounded a sharp bend in the road, the trees opened up to reveal not the small clearing I expected, but the remains of what appeared to be an old mining camp. Weathered wooden structures, mostly collapsed, dotted the area, and the skeletal frame of what must have been the main processing building loomed against the darkening sky. A faded sign still stood at the entrance to the site. Silver Creek Mine, no trespassing. Despite the warning, the place had clearly been abandoned for decades. The perfect spot for stealth camping, secluded, flat enough for comfortable sleeping, and with enough open sky for my solar panels to catch the morning sun. I carefully maneuvered around the scattered debris and parked near what appeared to be an old administrative building, one of the few structures still mostly intact. As I stepped out to stretch my legs, the mountain air felt unusually still and heavy. No birds called, no insects buzzed, just complete silence that seemed to press against my eardrums. I attributed it to the elevation and approaching storm system I'd seen on my weather app earlier. Setting up my equipment to monitor nighttime wildlife activity, I had no idea that I'd stumbled upon something far more disturbing than an abandoned mining operation, something that would make me question everything I thought I knew about the natural world. I spent the evening organizing my research notes and preparing my equipment for the next day's fieldwork. The silence outside remained unbroken except for the occasional creak of the old buildings settling. Around 10 p.m., I converted my seating area into a bed and settled in for the night, setting my wildlife audio monitors to record any nocturnal activity. The first hint that something was wrong came around midnight. I was drifting between sleep and wakefulness when my audio equipment began picking up unusual sounds. Not the familiar howls of wolves or calls of owls I was accustomed to, but something that sounded almost like pickaxes striking stone, followed by muffled voices. At first, I assumed it was just interference or wind playing tricks with the equipment, but when I checked the monitors, the sounds were clearly registering on multiple channels. I peered through my van windows, but saw nothing in the darkness except the looming silhouettes of the abandoned structures. The sounds continued, seemingly coming from deeper within the mining site, beyond the visible ruins. My scientific curiosity wrestled with a growing sense of unease. These recordings could be valuable. Perhaps there were nocturnal animals using the old mine shafts that hadn't been documented before. After 20 minutes of debate with myself, I decided to set up one of my camera traps closer to the source of the sounds. I pulled on my boots and jacket, grabbed my headlamp and a camera trap, and quietly exited the van. The night air hit me like a physical wall, far colder than it should have been for this time of year, with a metallic tang that reminded me of blood. My headlamp carved a narrow tunnel of light through the absolute darkness as I picked my way carefully toward what appeared to be a mine entrance partially hidden by collapsed timbers. The sounds grew more distinct as I approached, rhythmic striking, the creak of old cart wheels, and what increasingly sounded like human voices speaking in low, urgent tones. I froze, suddenly aware that I might not be alone in this supposedly abandoned place. Just as I was about to retreat to my van, my headlamp flickered and died. I tapped it frantically, but the light refused to return. The darkness felt suffocating, pressing in from all sides. As my eyes slowly adjusted, I realized I could see a faint blue glow emanating from the mine entrance ahead. Not the white or yellow light of modern lanterns, but a sickly phosphorescence that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. I took a cautious step backward, and my boot connected with something that rolled away with a metallic clatter. The sounds from the mine immediately ceased. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the mysterious noises had been, a waiting, watching silence. I fumbled for my phone to use as a light source, but the screen remained black despite my frantic tapping. All my electronic devices had failed simultaneously. As I stood paralyzed with indecision, a figure emerged from the mine entrance, a silhouette backlit by that eerie blue glow. The man, if it was a man, was rail-thin and stooped, wearing what appeared to be old-fashioned work clothes caked with dirt. His face remained in shadow, but I could feel his gaze fixed on me. "You shouldn't be here after sundown," he said, his voice like gravel being crushed underfoot. "The silver doesn't like outsiders watching its work." My scientific mind raced for rational explanations. Perhaps this was a squatter living in the abandoned mine, or another researcher who used unusual lighting equipment. "I'm sorry," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'm just doing wildlife research. I didn't realize anyone was still working here." The figure took a step forward, and in the dim blue light, I could now see his face, or what should have been his face. Where features should have been, there was only a shifting mass of what looked like silvery liquid metal, constantly flowing and reforming like mercury. "We've always worked here," he replied, other figures now emerging behind him with the same metallic non-faces. "Since 1879, the silver demands it, and now you've seen too much." I turned and ran, blind in the darkness, stumbling over debris and nearly falling several times as I desperately tried to remember the way back to my van. Behind me, I heard not footsteps but a sound like liquid metal flowing over stone, gaining speed as it pursued me through the ruins of the mining camp. I crashed through the underbrush, my lungs burning as I gasped for air in the thin mountain atmosphere. The sound of flowing metal grew louder behind me, accompanied now by an unnatural chittering that reminded me of mercury droplets dancing on a hot plate, but amplified 100-fold. My foot caught on an exposed root, sending me sprawling face first onto the rocky ground. The impact knocked the wind from my lungs and sent pain shooting through my ankle. Rolling onto my back, I saw them approaching, at least a dozen figures now, their bodies mostly human in shape, but moving with a fluidity that defied normal anatomy. In the faint moonlight that had finally broken through the clouds, their skin gleamed with a metallic sheen, rivulets of silver constantly flowing across their surface like living quicksilver. Where their eyes should be, only deep, dark pits reflected the moonlight like pools of oil. "The silver found us in the deep shaft," the first figure said, his voice bubbling as if speaking through liquid. "Changed us, preserved us. Now we mine for it, bring it more. It hungers for new vessels." As he spoke, droplets of the silvery substance detached from his arm, hovering in the air momentarily before shooting toward me with deliberate purpose. I scrambled backward, ignoring the pain in my ankle as I desperately tried to put distance between myself and those metallic projectiles. One droplet landed on my jacket sleeve, instantly burning through the fabric like acid and searing the skin beneath. I cried out, frantically wiping the substance away before it could burrow deeper. The tiny wound throbbed with an unnatural cold, and to my horror, the area around it began to take on a subtle metallic sheen. "The silver likes you," another figure gurgled, this one appearing to be what had once been a woman, her flowing metal features suggesting long hair and a dress from another era. "Strong body, good vessel. The mine needs new workers." They began to spread out, forming a half-circle that would cut off my escape route back to the van. My scientific mind raced through possibilities, some kind of toxic metal exposure causing hallucinations, an unknown fungal infection affecting these people, but the burning on my arm and the impossible fluid movement of their bodies defied any rational explanation. Whatever the silver was, it clearly wasn't anything documented in scientific literature. I backed toward what appeared to be the remains of a storage shed, hoping to find something, anything, to defend myself with. My hand closed around a rusted piece of pipe, and I swung it threateningly toward the advancing figures. "Stay back," I shouted, my voice echoing across the abandoned camp. The figures paused momentarily, their liquid faces rippling with what might have been amusement. "Iron," the lead figure burbled. "Won't help you. Nothing stops the silver once it chooses." To demonstrate, he reached out and grasped the end of the pipe. Where his mercurial fingers touched the metal, it began to transform, the rust flaking away as a silvery sheen spread along the length of my makeshift weapon. I dropped the pipe with a cry of alarm, watching as it continued to transform on the ground, eventually dissolving into a puddle of the same quicksilver substance that comprised my pursuers. The infection on my arm had spread further, veins of silver now tracing patterns beneath my skin, bringing with them a cold numbness that was beginning to affect my motor control. A sudden realization struck me. These figures weren't moving randomly. They were herding me away from my van and toward the main mine shaft entrance. Whatever the silver was, it seemed to be centered there, and these once human miners were its servants, gathering new victims. I changed tactics, feinting to the left before making a desperate sprint to the right, hoping to circle around the ruins back to my vehicle. The Mercury people reacted with unnatural speed, flowing rather than running to intercept me. One launched itself forward, transforming midair into an arcing splash of liquid metal that landed directly in my path before reforming into a humanoid shape. As it solidified, I could see remnants of what it had once been. A bearded face partially formed in the silver mass, mouth open in what might have been a permanent scream. "The silver has waited long for new blood," the partially formed face spoke, mercury lips moving in horrifying approximation of speech. "The old veins ran dry decades ago, but it found a new source. It found a way to extend beyond the mine." He gestured toward the distant forest where, now that I was paying attention, I could see silvery streaks running up the trunks of several trees, like metallic fungus slowly consuming the wood. I backed away, my scientist's mind finally processing the impossible truth. This wasn't human activity or contamination in the conventional sense. This was something else entirely, something that defied classification. The silver infection on my arm pulsed, and with each beat, I could feel foreign thoughts pressing at the edges of my consciousness. Ancient hunger, the desire to dig deeper, to spread, to consume and convert. With mounting horror, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my escape anymore. I was fighting for my identity, my very humanity. And time was running out. The silver infection continued its slow spread up my arm, every heartbeat pushing it further through my veins. With each pulse came foreign thoughts, glimpses of darkness, endless tunnels, the compulsion to dig and extract. I tore a strip from my shirt and quickly tied a makeshift tourniquet above my elbow, hoping to slow the progression. The pressure brought searing pain, but seemed to temporarily halt the advance of the metallic contamination. The circle of mercury miners closed in, their liquid metal bodies flowing unnaturally over the uneven terrain. I was running out of options and time. My gaze darted frantically around the clearing, searching for any escape route. The van was my only hope, but it was now blocked by several of the creatures. "You'll join us soon," gurgled the leader, silver droplets spraying from his mouth as he spoke. "I'll become part of the silver eventually. Better to surrender to it. Fighting only makes the conversion painful." As if to emphasize his point, the infection in my arm pulsed again, sending white-hot agony shooting through my body. I bit back a scream, refusing to give them the satisfaction. An idea formed in my desperate mind, a gamble based on my limited understanding of metallurgy from university chemistry. If these beings were truly mercurial in nature, they might share mercury's properties and weaknesses. Mercury solidifies at low temperatures and reacts with certain elements. I had liquid nitrogen in my van for preserving biological samples, cold enough to potentially slow them down. I feigned a stumble, dropping to one knee and clutching my infected arm. "It hurts," I gasped, trying to sound defeated. "I can't fight it anymore." The mercury miners exchanged what passed for glances among their flowing faces, their circle loosening slightly as they perceived my surrender. The moment their formation broke, I exploded into action, sprinting directly at the smallest gap between two figures. They reached for me with liquid metal hands that stretched impossibly long, but I ducked and rolled beneath their grasp, feeling droplets of their substance sizzle against my back as they brushed my jacket. I ran toward my van with every ounce of strength I had left, fumbling for my keys with my uninfected hand. Behind me, the chittering sound grew to a roar as the entire colony of mercury miners flowed across the ground in pursuit, merging into a single silvery wave that gained speed with every second. Reaching the van, I yanked the door open and threw myself inside, slamming and locking it just as the first silver tendrils reached the vehicle. They probed at the seams of the doors and windows, searching for entry points. I scrambled to the back of the van where my research equipment was stored, rummaging frantically for the liquid nitrogen container. The van rocked violently as the mercury mass surged against it, metal groaning under the pressure. I could see the window seals beginning to bulge inward as the substance pushed against them. One window cracked, a small rivulet of quicksilver forcing its way through and beginning to pool on the interior sill. My hands closed around the insulated container of liquid nitrogen, and I quickly unscrewed the safety valve. The pressurized supercooled liquid would be dangerous in the confined space, but I had no choice. As the silver mass found more entry points, I positioned myself in the driver's seat and started the engine, thanking whatever luck remained that the key fobs still worked despite the electromagnetic interference I'd experienced earlier. The engine roared to life just as the rear window gave way completely, a torrent of living metal pouring into the van. I floored the accelerator, using one hand to steer while holding the nitrogen container behind me. The van lurched forward, crashing through the underbrush and back toward the access road, the mercury miners still clinging to its exterior and slowly forcing their way inside. When the first substantial glob of mercury reached the passenger seat beside me, beginning to form into a humanoid shape, I released the pressure valve on the nitrogen container completely and hurled it into the back of the van. The effect was immediate and violent. The supercooled liquid exploded into gaseous form, instantly dropping the temperature to hundreds of degrees below freezing. The mercury substance solidified mid-motion, the partially formed figures freezing into bizarre sculptures of silver that cracked and shattered as the van bounced over the rough terrain. I gasped for breath in the rapidly cooling air, my lungs burning as if I were breathing fire instead of frost. The infection in my arm went dormant, the silver veins hardening into metallic tracks beneath my skin. The van fishtailed on the dirt road as I pushed it to its limits, putting as much distance as possible between myself and the mine. Through the rearview mirror, I could see more of the mercury miners emerging from the ruins, their silver bodies gleaming in the moonlight, but they didn't pursue beyond the boundaries of the mining camp. Whatever bound them to that place, perhaps proximity to the source of the silver, seemed to prevent them from venturing too far. After several miles of reckless driving, I finally slowed enough to assess my situation. The back of my van was covered in a layer of frost, with shattered fragments of solidified mercury scattered across the floor and furnishings. My research equipment was likely ruined by the extreme cold, but that was the least of my concerns. The tourniquet on my arm had loosened during my escape, and I could feel the infection beginning to warm and stir once more beneath my skin. I needed help, not just any hospital, but specialists who might understand what I was dealing with. As dawn broke over the mountain range, I set course for the nearest major city with a research university, racing against the silver substance that threatened to transform me into something no longer human. The first rays of sunlight hit my rearview mirror as I navigated the winding forest roads towards civilization. My infected arm throbbed with renewed vigor, the silver veins pulsing beneath my skin as they spread past the tourniquet. Each beat brought whispered thoughts that weren't my own, visions of dark tunnels, the sensation of clawing through earth, and an ancient, alien hunger that craved expansion. I fumbled with my satellite phone, grateful to discover it was working again now that I'd put distance between myself and the mine. I called my former research partner, Dr. Marcus Chun, at Oregon State University. Despite the early hour, he answered, his voice thick with sleep until he heard the panic in mine. "Eliza? What's wrong? Where are you?" His familiar voice was a lifeline amid my terror. "Something's happened, Marcus." I gasped, my words tumbling out in a frantic rush. "Silver Creek Mine. There's something there, some kind of metal parasite. It's in me now, changing me. I need help." I described my symptoms and the impossible creatures I'd encountered. To his credit, Marcus didn't dismiss my story as hallucination or trauma, instead asking precise questions about the infection's properties and progression. "Get to Portland immediately," he finally instructed. "I'll contact Dr. Reyna at OHSU. She specializes in metallotoxicity. Don't stop for anything, Eliza, and keep that arm cold. If it's any kind of metallic compound, lowering the temperature should slow its molecular movement." I cranked the air conditioning to maximum and directed all vents toward my infected arm, which now gleamed with an unmistakable metallic sheen up to my shoulder. The pain had given way to a disturbing numbness, and I could no longer feel my fingers on that hand. More alarming were the thoughts continuing to intrude on my consciousness, not just images now, but commands. Dig, extract, return to the silver, bring others. As I approached the outskirts of Portland, my vision began to blur. Silver flecks appeared at the edges of my peripheral sight, like mercury droplets suspended in my tear ducts. The digital clock on my dashboard read 8:47 a.m. when I finally pulled into the emergency entrance at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, where Marcus had told me Dr. Reyna would be waiting. The next hours passed in a haze of urgent activity. I remember being rushed into an isolation room, doctors in hazmat suits examining my arm, the hiss of pressurized decontamination chambers, and the burning cold of more liquid nitrogen being applied to the infection. Dr. Reyna's face peered at me through a protective mask, her eyes widening as she witnessed the silver substance react to her probes by attempting to flow up the metal instruments. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen," I heard her tell Marcus. "The substance appears to be a metallic compound with organic properties, almost like a liquid metal fungus with a silicon-based molecular structure. It's rewriting her cellular composition at the atomic level." Through my delirium, I tried to explain about Silver Creek Mine, the mercury miners, and the entity they called the Silver. Marcus took frantic notes, his face pale with concern. "We need to alert authorities, quarantine that entire area," he insisted. Dr. Reyna shook her head grimly. "First, we need to save your friend. The infection has reached her lymphatic system. if it gets to her heart or brain. She didn't finish the sentence. The only option was amputation, a desperate measure to stop the spread before it reached vital organs. I remember signing consent forms with my unaffected hand, the pen feeling impossibly heavy. As they prepared me for surgery, I insisted that Marcus promise to investigate the mine, to make sure no one else would stumble upon it as I had. I woke 2 days later minus my right arm, removed at the shoulder. The surgery had been successful in the most basic sense. I was alive, and the silver infection appeared to be gone. But the ordeal had taken its toll. My blood work showed concerning levels of heavy metal contamination throughout my system, and neurological tests revealed subtle changes in my brain chemistry that the doctors couldn't fully explain. During my recovery, Marcus kept his promise. He assembled a small team of researchers and hazardous materials specialists to investigate Silver Creek Mine. Their initial findings were disturbing enough to prompt immediate government intervention. The entire site was cordoned off by state authorities, then quickly placed under federal jurisdiction when the true nature of the silver began to emerge. According to historical records Marcus uncovered, the mine had been officially abandoned in 1879 after a mysterious incident killed 43 miners. The official report cited a collapse and toxic gas release, but private journals Marcus found from the mine's owner told a different story, of a peculiar silver vein uncovered in the deepest shaft that seemed to flow of its own accord, of miners who came in contact with it undergoing horrific transformations, and of the owner's final desperate attempt to seal the mine and prevent whatever they had discovered from spreading. The government team that entered the mine discovered the seal had been broken decades ago, likely by treasure hunters or curious explorers. What they found beyond that broken barrier caused the entire operation to go dark, classified at the highest levels. Marcus was removed from the investigation, his research confiscated, and all participants required to sign non-disclosure agreements under national security provisions. 3 weeks after my surgery, as I was preparing for discharge from the hospital, Dr. Reyna noticed something concerning during my final examination. Tiny silver flecks in my eyes, almost imperceptible unless viewed under certain light. Additional scans revealed the horrible truth. Microscopic particles of the silver substance had survived in my system, too small to be detected initially. They had crossed the blood-brain barrier. I was immediately placed in a specialized containment unit, subjected to experimental treatments aimed at eliminating the remaining particles. Nothing worked. The infection was dormant but present, integrated at a cellular level that made it impossible to extract without destroying the surrounding tissue. The best they could do was suppress it with a cocktail of heavy metal chelating agents and experimental compounds that I would need to take for the rest of my life. 6 months later, I was conditionally released under strict monitoring protocols. I wear a medical alert bracelet and must report for weekly blood tests and brain scans. My research career is over. No university or laboratory will risk exposure to whatever I carry in my system. My van and all my possessions from that night were incinerated as a precaution. The nightmares are the worst part. Vivid dreams of silver tunnels expanding through Earth, of a vast network spreading beneath the forests of Oregon like metallic mycelium, patiently growing and waiting. Sometimes I wake convinced I can feel the infection stirring, responding to some silent call from miles away. Last week, I received an unmarked envelope containing a single newspaper clipping, a small article about unusual silver-colored growth discovered on trees near Blue Mountain wilderness areas, promptly quarantined by authorities citing invasive fungal concerns. No return address, but the handwriting on the envelope was unmistakably Marcus's. At night, when I'm alone with my thoughts, I can't shake the conviction that what I encountered wasn't just some unknown terrestrial element or compound. The way it thought, the way it strategized and adapted, it seemed like something else entirely. Something that had perhaps lain dormant in the earth for millennia until human mining activities disturbed it. Something patient, ancient, and hungry. The doctors say the silver in my system can't spread further while I maintain my medication regimen. But sometimes, in the mirror, I catch my reflection at just the right angle and see a metallic gleam behind my pupils that wasn't there before. And in those moments, I hear the whispers again. The silver always finds a way. The silver is patient. The silver waits. And I wonder, am I truly containing it? or merely incubating the next phase of its expansion. Dust swirled around my van's tires as I pulled off the highway, the engine humming low. I'm Lucas Bennett, 29 years old, from Seattle, Washington. My home's this beat up van I've been driving for 2 years, chasing freedom and quiet. Tonight, I'd parked near Oregon's Columbia River Gorge, a spot I'd heard was peaceful. The river's murmur was close, and tall pines blocked out the stars. It felt right, like a place to breathe. I'd been sketching landscapes all day, my pencils scattered across the fold-out table. My buddy, Clara Hensley, was supposed to meet me here tomorrow. She's 32, a photographer with a laugh that cuts through any gloom. I lit my camping stove, the flame flickering like it knew something I didn't. The air was crisp, heavy with pine. I sprawled on my mattress, flipping through a dog-eared book. The van's walls were plastered with postcards from places I'd been: Joshua Tree, Banff, Acadia. Each one's a memory, proof I'm living, not just existing. My phone had no signal, which was fine. I liked the disconnect sometimes. But something about the silence tonight felt thick, almost horror-like. I shook it off, blaming the long drive. I heated some soup, the steam curling up, and thought about Clara's stories. She always had one about some creepy roadside diner or abandoned barn she'd shot. I chuckled, picturing her face when she'd see this spot. The river's flow was steady, but I kept glancing at the windows. Nothing out there but trees. Still, my gut twisted a little. The van's my sanctuary, right? Wood paneling, fairy lights, a tiny sink I rigged myself. But as I sipped my soup, the darkness outside seemed to press against the glass. I'd parked off a dirt road, no one around for miles. That's how I like it, solitude's my thing. Yet, this solitude felt different, like it was watching me back. I thought about locking the doors, but laughed it off. Who's out here? Just me and the river. I grabbed my sketch pad, doodling the pines outside, their shapes jagged in the moonlight. Clara'd probably tease me for being so artsy. She's practical, always has a plan. Me? I drift. That's why we click. She grounds me. I leaned back, the mattress creaking under me. The gorge was stunning today, all cliffs and misty falls. I'd sketched Multnomah Falls earlier, tourists buzzing like flies. Now it was just me, no crowds, no noise. Perfect. But that quiet, it was starting to feel heavy, like it was hiding something scary. I sipped my coffee, cold now, and stared at the ceiling. My van's got this little skylight, and I watched clouds drift over the moon. It's weird how your mind plays tricks when you're alone. I thought I saw something move outside, but it was just branches swaying. Had to be. I turned on my radio, static mostly, but it broke the silence. Clara's got this vibe, fearless, but not reckless. She'd been vanlifing longer than me, taught me how to fix a busted alternator. I owed her for that. I wondered what she'd say about this spot. Probably something like, "Lucas, you picked the creepiest places." I grinned, imagining her voice. The night was cool, so I pulled a blanket over me. My van's cozy, but it's small, every sound's amplified. A twig snapped outside, and I froze. Just a deer, I told myself. Happens all the time. Still, I couldn't shake this feeling, like something disturbing was close. I checked my phone again, no bars. No way to call Clara if I needed to. Not that I did, right? I got up, stretched, and peeked through the curtain. Nothing but trees and the faint glint of the river. I'd driven through Hood River earlier, grabbed a burger at this dive bar. The bartender had warned about weird folks in the woods, but I'd brushed it off. Locals always have stories. Still, his words stuck with me now, like a splinter. I locked the doors, just in case. The van's got good locks, heavy ones I installed myself. I felt silly, but better safe than sorry. I climbed back into bed, the fairy lights casting soft shadows. Sleep was calling, but my brain wouldn't shut off. Something about this place felt off, like a horror movie I didn't sign up for. I thought about tomorrow. Clara'd bring her camera, probably make me pose for some artsy shot. I'd grown, but secretly love it. She's got a kid sister, Mia, who's 19, studying biology in Portland. Mia's shy, but sharp. Clara says she's smarter than both of us. I'd met her once, at a campfire in Bend. Nice kid. I wondered if she'd tag along tomorrow. The thought of company eased me a bit. I turned off the lights, the darkness swallowing everything. The river kept its rhythm, steady, almost too steady. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore that nagging feeling. Just tired, I told myself. That's all. I drifted toward sleep, the van's familiar creaks lulling me. I'd parked in remote spots before, Yellowstone, the Badlands, no problem. But here, the isolation felt sharper, like it had teeth. I pictured Clara's van rolling up tomorrow, her honking the horn like always. That'd break the spell, whatever this was. I wasn't scared, not really. Just unsettled. Like when you walk into a room and feel someone's been there. The gorge was beautiful, but beauty can hide things, you know? I shook my head, chuckling at myself. Too many late-night podcasts. Still, I kept one eye half open, just in case. The last thing I did was check the windows again. All clear. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the horror was just in my head. The van was my safe place, always had been. I pulled the blanket tighter, the river's sound fading as I sank deeper. Tomorrow'd be fine. Clara'd show up, we'd laugh about this. I was sure of it. Almost. Morning light slipped through the skylight, pale and cold. I rubbed my eyes, the unease from last night lingering like a bad dream. My phone was still dead. No signal, no text from Clara. Weird, since she's usually up early, bombarding me with plans. I shrugged it off. Maybe she was stuck in traffic. I stepped outside, the air sharp with pine and damp earth. The Columbia River Gorge looked serene, but something felt off, like the calm was a mask for something scary. My van's battery gauge was low. Crap. I'd left the lights on too long sketching last night. Rookie mistake. I kicked the tire, cursing under my breath. Now I had to figure out how to jump it without another car around. I popped the hood, checking the cables. Clara taught me this trick. Wiggle the terminals, pray it holds. No luck. The battery was deader than my phone. I scanned the dirt road, hoping for a passerby, but it was just me and the trees. That's when I noticed the scratches on the van's side. Long, shallow marks, like someone dragged a key across it. My stomach dropped. Animals don't do that. I told myself it was probably from a branch, but the doubt crept in, disturbing and heavy. I walked around, checking for more damage. Nothing else, just those marks. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe I parked too close to a tree. Yeah, right. Back inside, I rummaged for my portable charger. It was half dead too. Great. I needed Clara to show up, like yesterday. She'd have a jumper cable and that smug grin, saying, "Told you to check your gear, Lucas." I could almost hear her. I grabbed my map, old school, paper, since GPS was useless. Hood River was maybe 10 miles west. I could hike there, find help, but leaving the van felt wrong. It's my home, you know? All my stuff's in there. Plus, the scratches were nagging at me, like a horror story I couldn't shake. What if someone was out here last night? I decided to wait a bit, give Clara time to show. I made coffee on the stove, the hiss of the flame grounding me. The river's flow was louder today, or maybe I was just hyper-aware. I kept glancing at the windows, expecting, I don't know what. A face, maybe. Stupid, but the thought stuck. I remembered Clara telling me about a creepy guy she met at a gas station once. Kept asking where she was headed. She laughed it off, but I wondered now. People can be weird out here, where no one's watching. I sipped my coffee, the bitterness matching my mood. An hour passed. No Clara. I was getting antsy, pacing the van's tiny floor. The scratches kept pulling my eyes. They weren't random. They looked deliberate, like someone wanted me to see them. I grabbed my knife, a little pocket thing, and tucked it in my jeans. Felt silly, but better than nothing. I stepped outside again, scanning the woods. The pines were thick, swallowing sound. I called out, "Anyone there?" My voice echoed, unanswered. That's when I saw it. A boot print in the mud, not mine. Too big, too deep. My heart kicked up, the horror of it sinking in. I told myself to chill. Could be a hiker, right? The gorge is popular. But the print was fresh, and I hadn't seen anyone yesterday. I followed it a few steps, then stopped. It led into the trees, where the light barely reached. No way I was going in there alone. I thought about Clara's sister, Mia. She'd probably analyzed the print like a crime scene. The kid's got a brain for details. Me? I'm more instinct, and my instincts were screaming to stay put. I headed back to the van, locking the doors. The quiet was too much now, like it was hiding something disturbing. I tried the radio again, static, but I caught a faint voice, something about a missing camper. The signal cut out before I heard more. My skin prickled. Missing camper? Here? I told myself it was probably unrelated, but my brain was spinning horror stories. I checked my map again, plotting a route to Hood River. Walking was looking better, but the van, I couldn't just leave it. All my sketches, my gear, it's my life. Plus, Clara might show up and think I'd bailed. I decided to give it one more hour. Bad call, maybe, but I wasn't thinking straight. The scratches, the print, the dead battery, it was piling up, making me jumpy. I kept picturing Clara's van rolling in, her honking that stupid horn. But the road stayed empty. I grabbed my sketch pad, trying to distract myself, but my lines were shaky. I drew the boot print, like that'd make it less real. It didn't. I remembered a story Clara told about a guy in Nevada, parked his RV in the desert, woke up to find his tires slashed. Just kids, he thought, till he saw them watching from the dunes. Creepy as hell. I shook it off, but the memory clung. By noon, I was done waiting. I packed a bag, water, knife, map, and locked the van tight. I'd hike to Hood River, find a mechanic, maybe call Clara from a landline. The woods felt too close now, like they were leaning in. I took one last look at the scratches, my gut twisting. Something was wrong here, something scary I couldn't name. I started down the road, the river's sound fading behind me. I didn't look back, but I felt it. Eyes on me, somewhere in the trees. The dirt road stretched ahead, winding through pines that blocked the sun. I hiked fast, my backpack bouncing, the knife in my pocket a small comfort. The Columbia River Gorge felt different now, less like a postcard, more like a trap. My boots crunched gravel, the only sound besides my breathing. I kept checking over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone trailing me. Nothing yet, but that boot print was burned in my mind, a horror that wouldn't fade. I told myself I was overreacting, probably just a hiker like I'd thought before. But my gut screamed otherwise, and I was starting to listen. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. About a mile in, I spotted something odd, a torn piece of fabric caught on a branch. Red plaid, frayed at the edges. Didn't look like mine, and Clara's not the flannel type. I stopped, my heart thumping. Could have been nothing, just litter from some camper. But it felt wrong, disturbing, like a clue I didn't want to find. I remembered a movie Clara and I watched once. Some slasher flick where the killer left scraps of clothes to taunt people. I laughed it off then, but now? Not so funny. I left the fabric there, not touching it, and kept moving. The road was too quiet. No birds, no breeze. I tried to focus on Hood River, picturing a diner, a phone, maybe a tow truck for the van. But my brain kept circling back to the scratches, the print, and now this fabric. What if someone was out here, watching? I'd read about weirdos in the woods, people living off-grid, not always friendly. Clara once met a guy in Idaho who stared too long, asked too many questions. She drove off fast. I wish she was here now, cracking jokes, making this feel less scary. I checked my phone again, still no signal. Useless. The terror was creeping in, slow but real. Halfway to town, I heard it, a low hum, like an engine, faint but growing. My first thought was Clara, finally showing up. I stopped, listening hard, hope flaring. But the sound was wrong, too deep, like a truck, not her little van. I stepped off the road, crouching behind a tree. Felt paranoid, but better safe than sorry. The hum got louder, then stopped. Silence. My skin crawled. I peeked out, seeing nothing but road and woods. Then, a crunch, like boots on gravel, not far off. The horror hit me hard now. Someone was out there, and I wasn't alone. I stayed low, barely breathing. The crunching moved closer, then stopped again. I gripped my knife, useless as it probably was. My mind raced. Could be a ranger, maybe? But rangers don't sneak. I thought about yelling, but my throat locked up. Whoever it was, they weren't calling out either. That's what freaked me out most. No hello, no normal human stuff. Just steps, deliberate, like they knew exactly where to go. I remembered Mia, Clara's sister, saying once how predators stalk, quiet, patient. The thought made my stomach twist, disturbing and way too real. I waited, maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10. No more steps, no hum. I crept back to the road, every nerve on edge. That's when I saw the tire tracks, fresh, wide, not from my van. They veered off into the trees, where the boot prints had gone yesterday. My blood ran cold. This wasn't random. Someone was out here, doing what? I didn't want to know, but I couldn't ignore it. The terror was full on now, like a weight crushing my chest. I thought about turning back to the van, but that felt worse. Forward was my only shot. I kept moving, faster now, the road blurring under my feet. The woods seemed to close in, branches clawing at the sky. I kept seeing things, flashes of movement, shapes in the shadows. Probably my imagination, but it didn't feel like it. I remembered a story from a bar in Montana. Some guy swearing he saw a figure in the woods, just standing there, watching. Drunk talk, I'd thought. Now, I wasn't so sure. Every step felt like a gamble, like I was walking deeper into something scary I couldn't escape. Clara, where the hell are you? Then I found it. A campsite, tucked off the road. Abandoned, or so it looked. A fire pit, cold, with charred wood. A sleeping bag, ripped open, stuffing spilling out. My heart sank. This wasn't right. I stepped closer, stupidly curious. There was a water bottle, half full, and a phone, screen cracked, dead. My hands shook as I picked it up. No name, no clues, but it felt like a warning, a horror story unfolding right in front of me. I dropped it, backing away. Someone had been here, and they hadn't left happy. I turned to go, and that's when I heard it again. The hum, closer this time, coming from the direction I was headed. No way that was Clara. My instincts screamed run, but where? Back to the van. Into the woods? The road felt exposed, like a spotlight was on me. The campsite, the tracks, the fabric, it was all connected, and I was caught in it. Something was clearly wrong, something disturbing I couldn't ignore. I froze, the sound growing louder, my mind racing for a plan, any plan, before it was too late. The hum roared closer, a guttural growl that shook my bones. I bolted off the road, diving into the pines, branches snagging my jacket. The Columbia River Gorge was a maze now, every tree a wall, every shadow a threat. My heart pounded so loud I swore it'd give me away. I crouched low, mud soaking my knees, and listened. The engine cut off, replaced by voices, low, rough, not Clara's. My knife felt like a toy in my pocket, useless against whatever was out there. The terror was choking me, a horror I couldn't shake. I needed to move, fast, but my legs were jelly. All I could think was, get to Hood River, find people, survive. I crept forward, keeping low, the voices fading but not gone. The woods were thick, disorienting. I'd always loved the wild, but now it felt like a trap, something scary closing in. I tripped over a root, biting my lip to stay quiet. Blood tasted metallic, grounding me. I thought of Clara, her van, her laugh. Was she okay? The thought of her out here, caught in this, made my stomach lurch. I pushed on, aiming west, guessing the direction. My map was useless without landmarks. A twig snapped behind me, too close. I froze, breath hitching, expecting a hand on my shoulder. Nothing, just the wind, maybe, or maybe not. The river's roar was faint now, my only guide. I pictured Hood River, a gas station, a phone, safety. But the woods kept twisting, like they didn't want me to leave. I remembered a story Clara told, about a hiker in Oregon who vanished, found weeks later, no explanation. I'd laughed it off, city boy skepticism. Now it felt too real, too disturbing. I checked my bag, water, map, knife. Not much, but enough to keep going. The voices were gone, but I felt watched, eyes drilling into my back. Every step was a gamble, every rustle a warning. I had to keep moving, no matter what. I hit a clearing, moonlight spilling over a rocky slope. Bad news, it was open, exposed. Crossing it was suicide, but going around meant losing time. The hum started again, distant but closing. My chest tightened, the horror of being caught driving me forward. I sprinted across, rocks sliding under my boots, expecting a shout or worse. Nothing came, but my luck felt thin, like a thread about to snap. On the other side, I ducked behind a boulder, gasping. My hands shook as I pulled out the knife, its blade glinting uselessly. What was I even fighting? I didn't know, and that scared me most. The hum stopped again. Silence was worse. It meant they were listening, maybe hunting. I thought of Mia, Clara's sister, her biology nerd brain. She'd probably say fear's just chemicals, adrenaline. Didn't help. This was life or death, no sugarcoating it. I moved again, slower, sticking to shadows. The woods felt alive, branches creaking like whispers. I saw something, a shape, tall, too still to be a tree. My blood froze. I blinked and it was gone. Mind tricks, had to be, but my gut said run, and I listened, weaving through pines, my breath ragged, the terror pushing me harder. I stumbled onto a trail, narrow but man-made. Hope flared. Trails lead somewhere, right? I followed it, praying for a road, a ranger, anything. But the trail was rough, littered with broken bottles, old cans. Not a good sign. I remembered that campsite, the torn sleeping bag, the cracked phone. Was this connected? My mind spun horror stories, cults, drifters, worse. Claire had called me dramatic, but she wasn't here. The trail curved, and I saw it. A glint of metal through the trees. A vehicle? My heart leapt, then sank. Not Claire's van. Too big, too dark. I dropped low, fear clawing my throat. The vehicle was a truck, parked, lights off. Two figures stood nearby, their backs to me. I couldn't hear them, but their movements were sharp, purposeful. One held something long, a tool, maybe a weapon. My mouth went dry. This was bad, real bad. I backed away, slow, praying my boots didn't crunch. The trail was my only shot, but it felt like a funnel, leading me straight to them. I thought about doubling back, but the clearing was too risky. I was trapped, the scary reality sinking in. I had to outsmart them, stay unseen, or I was done. I turned, moving parallel to the trail, deeper into the woods. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but stopping wasn't an option. The river was louder now, a lifeline. If I could reach it, maybe I'd find a bridge, a road. I pictured Clara's face, her telling me to keep going. I owed her that much. A branch snagged my bag, ripping it. Water bottle fell, glugging into the dirt. I cursed silently, leaving it. Survival trumped sentiment. The truck's engine roared to life behind me, headlights cutting through the trees. They were moving, and I was running out of time. I hit the riverbank, water rushing black and cold. No bridge, no road, just rocks and current. The headlights were closer, sweeping the woods. I had no choice. I waded in, the chill biting my legs, slipping on slimy stones. The current pulled, strong, but I fought it, aiming for the other side. My teeth chattered, fear and cold mixing into something primal. The truck stopped somewhere above, doors slamming. Voices again, closer. I ducked low, water to my waist, the horror of being seen driving me forward. I was out of options, out of luck, and the danger was right behind me. The river dragged at me, relentless, but I clawed my way to the far bank. Soaked, shaking, I collapsed behind a fallen log, the truck's lights still slashing the dark above. My knife was gone, lost in the water, not that it mattered now. The voices were louder, arguing, then quiet. I held my breath, every muscle screaming. The Columbia River Gorge had turned on me, its beauty a lie hiding something disturbing. I thought of Clara. Had she made it here at all? My phone, dead in my pocket, held no answers. All I had was instinct, and it was failing me. I needed to move, but where? The woods, the river, the road, all felt like dead ends. I crawled along the bank, mud caking my hands. The truck hadn't moved, its engine idling like a predator waiting. I pictured Hood River, so close yet impossible. My mistake was clear now, waiting too long, trusting the quiet. I should have hiked out yesterday, battery or no. Clara would have, no hesitation. She'd always been smarter about risks. I saw a flash in my mind. Her van, parked somewhere, empty. The horror of it hit like a punch. I shook it off, forcing myself to focus. Survival first, then answers. But my body was slowing, cold and fear taking their toll. A light flickered ahead, a campfire maybe? Hope surged, stupid and reckless. I crept closer, staying low. It wasn't a fire. It was a lantern, swinging from a branch, casting shadows that danced like ghosts. Below it, a trap. Ropes, stakes, a net half hidden in the dirt. My blood ran cold. This wasn't random. Someone had planned this, set it up for me. Others? The scary truth was sinking in. I backed away, heart hammering, but my foot caught a root. I fell, hard, a grunt escaping before I could stop it. The voices snapped silent. They'd heard me. My deadly mistake was moving too fast, not checking my steps. Footsteps now, heavy, coming my way. I scrambled up, ignoring the pain in my ankle. The lantern's glow felt like a spotlight, exposing me. I ran, blind, branches whipping my face. The river was behind me, no escape there. The woods were all I had, but they weren't safe either. I thought of Mia, her calm logic, assess, adapt, survive. I tried, but panic was winning. The footsteps were closer, deliberate, not rushing. They knew I had nowhere to go. The terror was total now, a weight crushing my chest. I saw Clara's face again, heard her laugh. It felt like a goodbye, and I hated it. I tripped again, landing in a ditch. My hands hit something soft, cloth, maybe a bag. No, not a bag. A jacket, Clara's, the one she wore everywhere, green with a patched elbow. My stomach dropped, horror choking me. It was torn, stained dark. I wanted to scream, but I bit it back. The footsteps stopped, too close. A shadow loomed above the ditch, faceless, holding that long tool, definitely a weapon now. I froze, trapped, the tragedy unfolding in slow motion. Clara's jacket in my hands, her absence screaming louder than any sound. I'd failed her, failed myself. The shadow shifted, raising the weapon. My mind blanked, survival kicking in. I rolled, barely dodging as the tool slammed into the dirt where I'd been. I scrambled up, running again, Clara's jacket clutched tight. The woods blurred, my ankle throbbing, but I didn't stop. The shadow didn't chase, not yet, like it knew I was done for. I saw lights ahead, real ones, maybe a road. Hood River? I didn't care. I ran toward them, the jacket proof of something I couldn't face. The horror wasn't just out there, it was in me now, in what I'd found, what I'd lost. The lights grew brighter, headlights on a highway. I stumbled onto asphalt, waving my arms, Clara's jacket flapping. A car swerved, honking, but didn't stop. I kept going, shouting for help, my voice raw. Behind me, the woods were silent, but I felt them watching, waiting. The shadow was still out there, maybe others. I'd escaped, but at what cost? Clara was gone, her jacket, the campsite, all signs pointing to a truth too disturbing to accept. I'd made it to the road, but the terror clung to me, a stain I couldn't wash off. I kept moving, no plan, just instinct. A truck slowed beside me, not the one from before. An older guy leaned out, asking if I was okay. I could barely speak, holding up Clara's jacket like it explained everything. He looked spooked, told me to get in. I did, numb, the warmth of the cab foreign after the cold. He said he'd take me to Hood River, to the police. I nodded, staring at the jacket. The tragedy was real now, no denying it. I'd run from danger, but it had followed me, in memories, in guilt. Clara's laugh echoed in my head, fading with every mile. The road stretched on, Hood River's lights faint in the distance. I told the driver bits and pieces, enough to get help, not enough to sound crazy. The police would ask questions, dig into the woods, maybe find answers. But I knew some truths stay buried. Clara's jacket lay in my lap, heavy as a gravestone. I'd survived, but it didn't feel like winning. The horror was over, maybe, but the scars were mine to carry. The gorge loomed outside, beautiful and cruel, hiding its secrets in the dark. I closed my eyes, wishing I could forget. Rain tapped my van's roof, a steady rhythm as I pulled into a turnout off Highway 101. I'm Nora Caldwell, 27 years old, from Boise, Idaho. My home's this old cargo van I've been fixing up for a year, chasing waves and open roads. Tonight, I'd parked near Oregon's Cannon Beach, drawn by its moody shores and haystack rocks. The ocean churned beyond the dunes, a low roar that felt alive. I'd spent the day sketching driftwood, my charcoal smudged across my fingers. My friend, Ethan Waller, was due tomorrow. Guy's a surfer, 30, with a grin that hides his sharp edges. I flicked on my lantern, its glow warm against the damp chill. The van smelled of cedar and coffee, homey despite the storm. I sprawled on my bunk, maps pinned to the walls fluttering as I cracked a window. The van's my escape, shelves of books, a tiny stove, fairy lights I strung up for vibe. I'd been to Cannon Beach before, loved its rugged charm, but tonight felt heavier, like the air was holding a secret. Maybe it was the rain, relentless, turning the dirt to slop. Ethan laughed if he saw me now, overthinking the weather. He's all instinct, dives into waves I'd never touch. I sipped tea, the mug warming my hands, and tried to shake the unease. Something about the dark outside felt horror-like, too quiet under the storm's noise. The beach was empty when I'd scouted it earlier. No campers, no lights. Just me, the van, and the Pacific's endless growl. I like that usually. Solitude's my fuel. But tonight, the isolation prickled my skin, like I'd parked somewhere I shouldn't. I locked the doors, a habit from city days, though who'd be out here? I chuckled, picturing Ethan's voice. Nora, you worry too much. He's got a sister, Lila, 24, a marine biology grad who tags along sometimes. She's quiet, watches everything like she's solving a puzzle. I wondered if she'd come tomorrow. Company'd be nice. I flipped through my sketchbook, the day's drawings rough but honest. Twisted roots, sea foam, gulls. Cannon Beach had this wild beauty, cliffs looming like they guarded something. I'd grabbed fish and chips in town, overheard locals muttering about odd folks near the dunes. Small town gossip, I figured, but their words stuck, sharp and disturbing. I shook it off, blaming the rain for my mood. My phone had one bar, enough to text Ethan I'd arrived. No reply yet. Typical. He's crap with phones. Still, I checked the signal again, just in case. The van's cozy, right? I've got blankets, a rug I haggled for in Santa Fe. But the rain kept hammering, and every gust rocked the van like a cradle. I thought about tomorrow. Ethan'd probably drag me to the water, cold or not. I'd grumble, but he'd win me over. Lila, if she came, would nerd out about tide pools, pointing out crabs like they're gold. I smiled, imagining it. Then a thud hit the van's side. Not wind, too solid. My pulse jumped. Probably a branch, I told myself, but I grabbed my flashlight, heart thumping. The horror of being alone hit hard, sudden and real. I shone the light outside, beam cutting through the wet dark. Nothing but rain and sand. No branches, no tracks. I laughed, shaky, feeling dumb. Still, I double-checked the locks, my fingers cold. Ethan called me paranoid, but he's not here. I climbed back to my bunk, pulling the curtain tight. The ocean's roar was louder now, or maybe I was just wired. I remembered a story Lila told once, about a diver who swore something grabbed him underwater. Not a shark, not anything he could name. Freaked me out then, and it wasn't helping now. I turned up my radio, static mostly, for noise. Sleep was calling, but my brain wouldn't quit. I kept replaying that thud, wondering if I'd missed something. The van's my safe spot, always has been. Big Sur, Teton, no problems. But Cannon Beach felt different, like it was watching me. I thought about Ethan's surfboard, strapped to his van, ready for dawn. He'd roll in, all energy, and this weird vibe would vanish. I hoped. The rain eased a bit, leaving just drips and the ocean's pulse. I closed my eyes, telling myself it was nothing, just a stormy night. I drifted, the van's familiar creaks mixing with the waves. I'd parked remote before, no sweat, but this spot felt sharper, like it had claws. I pictured Ethan's van pulling up, him honking like an idiot. That'd fix everything. I wasn't scared, not exactly, just off balance, like when you step on sand and it shifts. The locals' warnings nagged at me, their faces tight with something I couldn't read. Probably nothing, I told myself. Just a quiet town with stories. Still, I kept my flashlight close, beam ready. The last thing I did was check the windows. All clear, just rain streaking the glass. I was being silly, letting the dark mess with me. The van's tough, built to keep me safe. I pulled my blanket up, the ocean sound fading as I sank toward sleep. Tomorrow'd be fine. Ethan, maybe Lila, sun on the waves. I could feel it, but deep down, something stirred, a scary little whisper I couldn't quite hush. I ignored it, or tried to, and let the night take over. Morning came gray, the rain a drizzle now, fog curling off the dunes. I woke stiff, the thud from last night still nagging me. I'm Nora Caldwell, still parked near Cannon Beach, Oregon, my van a cocoon against the damp. I checked my phone, no bars, no word from Ethan. Odd, since he's usually up with the sun, chasing waves. I stepped outside, boots sinking in wet sand. The ocean growled, restless, and the air felt thick, like it was hiding something scary. My van's battery was fine, but the starter clicked, refusing to turn over. Damn it. I'd fixed it last month, thought I was good. Now I was stranded, miles from town, and that uneasy horror from last night was back. I popped the hood, rain speckling my jacket. Loose wire, maybe? I jiggled the cables, but no dice. Ethan know what to do. He's rebuilt engines for fun. I pictured him smirking. Nora, you skipped the toolbox again. Guilty. My tools were basic, not enough for this. I scanned the beach road. Empty, no cars, no help. That's when I saw it. A dent on the van's rear door, fresh, like something hit it hard. My gut twisted, The memory of that thud too clear. No way that was wind or a branch. Something disturbing was going on, and I couldn't ignore it. Back inside, I grabbed my coffee tin, hands shaky. I needed to think. Cannon Beach was a couple miles north, walkable, but leaving the van felt risky. It's my home, packed with my sketches, my life. Plus, Ethan might show, and I'd hate to miss him. I boiled water, the stove's hiss calming me a bit. The fog outside was soupy, swallowing the dunes. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting a face to appear. Stupid, right? But that dent, it wasn't there yesterday. I thought of Lila, Ethan's sister. She'd probably say, "Check for evidence, Nora." Wish I had her brain now. I sipped my coffee, pacing the van's tight space. The dent was small but deep, like a fist or a rock. I told myself it could have been kids messing around. But out here? Doubtful. I remembered a diner in town, locals whispering about trouble near the beach. I'd shrugged it off. Tourist traps love their ghost stories. Now, those whispers felt heavy, like a horror movie I'd wandered into. I checked my phone again, still dead. No way to call Ethan or anyone. I needed a plan. Wait for him, hike to town, or try fixing the van blind. None felt right. An hour dragged by, fog thickening, no Ethan. I was antsy, the quiet too loud. I stepped out, circling the van, looking for clues. That's when I found it, a scrap of rope, knotted, half buried in the sand near the dent. Not mine, not normal. My skin prickled. Rope's just rope, I told myself, but it looked deliberate, like someone left it for me to find. I thought of Ethan's stories, sketchy types he'd met surfing remote breaks, guys who eyed his gear too long. Was this like that? The scary feeling was growing, and I didn't like it. I tucked the rope in my pocket, not sure why. Evidence, maybe, like Lila'd want. I tried the van again. Click, click, nothing. Frustration boiled up, but panic was right behind it. The fog made everything blurry, like the world was closing in. I called out, "Ethan? Anyone?" My voice died in the mist, no echo, no answer. That's when I heard it, a scrape, faint, from the dunes. Not waves, not wind. My heart kicked up, the horror of last night's thud rushing back. I froze, straining to hear, but it was gone. Or was it? I locked myself in the van, pulse racing. The rope, the dent, the scrape, it was adding up, and none of it was good. I grabbed my sketch pad, doodling the rope to calm down, but my lines were jagged. I remembered a podcast Ethan played once, about a camper who found weird marks near their tent, ignored them, and regretted it. I wasn't ignoring this, but what could I do? I checked my map. Town was closer than I thought, maybe an hour's walk. But the van, my stuff. I couldn't just leave. Could I? The disturbing vibe was suffocating now. I decided to wait till noon, give Ethan a chance to show. Bad call, probably, but splitting felt worse. I kept the curtains cracked, watching the fog. The ocean's roar was steady, but it didn't soothe me anymore. I thought of Lila, her cool head. She'd probably cataloged the rope, analyzed the dent like a lab sample. Me? I was all nerves, jumping at shadows. The scrape came again, closer, deliberate. I gripped my flashlight, heavy enough to swing if I had to. Something was out there, and it wasn't friendly. The terror was real, creeping closer with every second. By 11, I was done. I packed a bag, water, map, flashlight, the rope, and locked the van tight. I'd hike to Cannon Beach, find a mechanic, call Ethan from town. The fog was a wall, but I knew the road's curve. I started walking, the dunes looming like ghosts. The dent, the rope, the scrape, they weren't random. Something scary was happening, something I couldn't explain. I moved fast, sand crunching under my boots, refusing to look back. The ocean's growl followed me, but so did the feeling I wasn't alone. Fog clung to me like damp cloth as I trudged along the beach road, Cannon Beach still out of sight. My boots sank into the sand, slowing me down, and the ocean's roar felt too loud, like it was warning me. The rope in my pocket weighed heavy, a reminder of the dent, the scrape, things I couldn't explain. I kept my flashlight off, not wanting to draw eyes, but the dark was thick, horror seeping into every step. I thought of Ethan, hoping he'd roll up any second, his van's headlights cutting through. But the road stayed empty, and my gut churned with the scary truth. Something was out here, and it wasn't just my imagination. A half-mile in, I spotted something glinting in the dunes, a metal buckle, half buried, attached to a torn strap. I stopped, my breath catching. It wasn't mine, and it looked fresh, like it hadn't been there long. I crouched, heart thumping, and nudged it with a stick. The strap was leather, weathered but not old. My mind flashed to Lila. She'd say it's evidence, maybe from a bag or belt. But out here, alone, it felt like a trap, something disturbing left to mess with me. I left it, standing fast, the terror creeping up my spine. What was going on? I kept moving, faster now, the fog twisting shapes into monsters. I'd always loved spooky stories. Ethan and I swapped them over campfires, laughing. But this wasn't fun. This was real, and the horror was sinking in. I remembered a news clip from Boise, some hiker finding odd markers in the woods. Rocks, cloth, stuff that didn't belong. Never solved, just creepy. Was this like that? The road curved, and I saw tire tracks, fresh, veering off toward the dunes. Not my van's, not Ethan's. My stomach dropped. Someone else was here, and they weren't playing games. Then I heard it. A low whistle, sharp, cutting through the fog. Not a bird, not the wind. Human, deliberate, maybe a signal. I froze, my skin crawling. It came from the dunes, not far. I ducked behind a driftwood pile, holes hammering, and waited. The whistle stopped, replaced by a rustle, like someone moving through grass. I thought of Ethan's stories, sketchy drifters he'd met, guys who'd stare too long at his board. Was this one of them? The scary part was the silence after. No voices, no steps, just the ocean and my heartbeat screaming in my ears. I peeked out, seeing nothing but fog and shadows. My hands shook as I gripped my bag, the rope inside feeling like a curse now. I should have stayed with the van, maybe, but too late for that. The whistle came again, closer, from a different angle. My blood ran cold. There was more than one, had to be. I remembered Lila talking about pack behavior in animals, how they circle prey. This felt like that, a horror show with me as the target. I wanted to run, but my legs felt glued, fear locking me down. Something was clearly wrong, and I was in deep. I forced myself to move, staying low, skirting the road's edge. The dunes were a maze, hiding whoever was out there. I saw a shape, tall, vague, near a cluster of seagrass. I blinked, and it was gone, like it melted into the fog. My mind screamed trick, but my gut said threat. I thought of calling out, demanding who they were, but that'd give me away. Instead, I crept forward, aiming for town, praying the fog would hide me. The whistle didn't return, but the rustling did, keeping pace. The terror was a weight now, crushing, making every step a fight. A clearing opened up, the road meeting a gravel path. I hesitated. Paths mean people, but not always the good kind. There was a sign, rusted, pointing to a lookout. Could be a ranger station nearby, maybe help. But the tracks I'd seen earlier, they went this way too. My heart sank, the disturbing reality hitting hard. I was being herded, or at least it felt like it. I thought of Ethan, his easy confidence. He'd charge down that path, no question. Me? I wasn't so sure. But standing still wasn't an option, not with the rustling closing in. I took the path, gravel crunching too loud under my boots. The fog thinned a bit, showing jagged cliffs ahead. Then I saw it. A bundle by the trail, cloth and rope, tied tight. My breath hitched. It looked like gear, abandoned, but the knots were precise, like the rope in my pocket. I didn't touch it, didn't dare. This wasn't random litter. This was a message, scary and clear. I backed away, my mind racing. Was this Ethan's? Lila's? No, couldn't be. But doubt gnawed at me, horror blooming like rot. The rustling stopped, and that was worse. Silence meant they were close, watching. I broke into a jog, the path narrowing, cliffs looming. The ocean's roar was fainter now, no comfort left in it. I kept seeing that bundle in my mind, those knots, too neat, too wrong. The whistle hadn't returned, but I felt eyes, heavy, tracking me. Town was close. I had to believe that, but every step felt like a trap snapping shut. Something was out here, something disturbing I couldn't name, and it wasn't letting go. I gripped my flashlight tighter, ready to swing, and pushed on, the path my only guide, leading me deeper into whatever this was. The path twisted under my boots, gravel spitting as I ran, the fog a suffocating shroud. Cannon Beach's cliffs loomed, their edges sharp against the gray, but I barely saw them. My lungs burned, the rope in my pocket bouncing like a taunt. That whistle, those knots, they weren't random, and the horror of it drove me forward. I pictured Ethan's van, hoped he'd be at the lookout, but deep down, I knew better. The rustling was back, closer, matching my pace through the dunes. My flashlight bobbed, useless in the murk, but I clutched it like a lifeline. This was it. Run or die, no middle ground. The ocean's roar faded, leaving just my ragged breath and the scary truth. I was being hunted. I veered off the path, diving into tall grass, praying it'd hide me. Thorns snagged my jeans, but I didn't stop, crouching low, heart slamming. The rustling paused, then shifted, 2 sets of steps now, maybe 3, fanning out. I bit my lip, tasting salt, and thought of Lila, her calm, nerdy voice saying, "Stay low, blend in." Easy for her to say. The fog was my only ally, but it hid them too. I heard a grunt, low, human, not far. My skin crawled, terror clawing my chest. I had to move, but every direction felt like a trap, a horror movie with no cutscene. I crept forward, grass slicing my palms. The lookout was close. I saw its silhouette, a wooden platform jutting over the cliff. If I could reach it, maybe there'd be a radio, a ranger. Wishful thinking, but it kept me going. Then a light flashed, sharp, cutting through the fog. Not mine. A beam swept the grass, slow, deliberate. I dropped flat, mud soaking my shirt, and held my breath. The light lingered, inches from my head, then moved on. My mind screamed run, but I waited, counting seconds, the disturbing reality sinking in. They knew I was here, and they weren't guessing. The steps crunched closer, boots on gravel, then grass. I saw boots, heavy, scuffed, not Ethan's. My stomach twisted. I thought of yelling, begging, but that'd end me faster. Instead, I inched backward, toward the cliff's edge. Bad idea, but the lookout was cut off. The ocean was below, a last resort I didn't want to take. I remembered Ethan's surf stories, riptides, rocks, no mercy. But staying meant facing whoever, whatever, this was. The beam swung back, catching my shoe. A shout broke the quiet, rough, and I bolted, the scary chase on, no choice left. I sprinted, grass whipping my legs, the cliff's edge too close. The lookout loomed, but so did the steps, gaining fast. I tripped, rolling into a ditch, pain shooting through my knee. The flashlight slipped, clattering away. I scrambled up, hands muddy, and saw them. 2 figures, vague in the fog, one with that damn light. They didn't run, just walked, like they had all the time in the world. That was worse, the horror of their confidence. I thought of Lila, her logic, panic kills. I forced a breath, ducking behind a rock, and scanned for escape. The cliff or the dunes, both bad, but I picked the dunes. I ran again, weaving through sand hills, my knee throbbing. The fog was thinning, showing glimpses of the beach road. Town wasn't far, maybe a mile. I could make it, had to. But the steps didn't stop, steady, relentless. I heard a whistle again, sharp, mocking, from another direction. My heart sank, more of them, circling. I pictured Ethan's face, his grin, and clung to it. He'd fight, so I would too. A dune rose ahead, steep but climbable. I scrambled up, sand sliding, nails breaking as I clawed. The top gave me a view, lights, faint, maybe Cannon Beach. Hope, but so fragile. Halfway down the dune, I heard an engine, a low growl, not far. Headlights flared, slicing the fog, pinning me like a bug. I dove sideways, tumbling into a hollow, breath gone. The vehicle, a truck, not Ethan's van, idled nearby, doors creaking open. Voices now, clipped, arguing over where I'd gone. I curled tight, sand in my mouth, the terror absolute. They were organized, not drifters, not random. I thought of that bundle, those knots, planned, precise. This was their game, and I was losing. My only shot was staying hidden, but the dunes weren't safe for long. I waited, shivering, till the truck moved off, its rumble fading. The voices lingered, fainter, splitting up. I crawled out, every sound a knife to my nerves. The road was close. I could see its outline, a lifeline to town. But the dunes stretched wide, exposed. Crossing meant risking the light, the boots, everything. I thought of Ethan, Lila, wondered if they'd come here, if they'd seen those knots too. The horror of not knowing pushed me forward. I stood, shaky, and ran, low and fast, aiming for the road. praying the fog would hold just a little longer. The road hit my boots like salvation, hard and real. I sprinted, ignoring my knee, the town's glow pulling me. No whistles now, no steps, but I felt them, just out of sight. The ocean roared again, distant, like it was watching, waiting. I didn't look back, couldn't afford to. Every second was borrowed, every step a fight against the dark. Cannon Beach was there, somewhere, and I'd reach it, or die trying. The scary part wasn't just them. It was how close I'd come to stopping, giving up. I wouldn't. Not yet. Asphalt blurred under me, my lungs screaming as I ran toward Cannon Beach's lights. The fog was lifting, but the chill clung, and the rope in my pocket felt like a brand. Those figures, that truck, they hadn't followed. Not yet, but the horror stayed, heavy as guilt. I kept seeing Ethan's grin, Lila's quiet stare, wondering if they'd made it here at all. My knee buckled with every step, but stopping wasn't an option. The road was empty. No cars. No help. Just me and the ocean's distant growl. I'd escaped the dunes, but something disturbing whispered I wasn't free. Not really. Town was close, though safety, maybe answers. I hit the edge of town, streetlights buzzing, a diner's neon sign flickering. My breath hitched, relief mixing with dread. I'd made it, but what had I left behind? My van, my home, still out there, dented, exposed. I stumbled to the diner, pushing through the door, the bell jangling too loud. A waitress, older, tired, looked up, startled. "You okay, hon?" I nodded, barely, collapsing into a booth. My hands shook as I pulled out the rope, staring at it like it'd speak. The terror was fading, but the truth was worse. Something had happened out there, something scary I couldn't undo. I asked for a phone, voice cracked, and called Ethan's number. Voicemail, his dumb surfer greeting. I tried Lila's same. My stomach sank, a horror deeper than the chase. The waitress brought coffee, her eyes soft but curious. I mumbled about my van breaking down, leaving out the knots, the boots. She didn't need that story. I sipped, the warmth useless against the cold inside. My mistake was clear now, parking so far out, ignoring the dent, the thud. I thought of Ethan, how he'd tease me for freaking out. But he wasn't here, and that silence was a wound, raw and real. A cop showed up, small town, word travels. I told him enough, stranded van, weird noises, tracks. Not the rope, not the bundle. He nodded, jotting notes, said he'd check the beach road. His radio crackled, something about a missing hiker, cut off quick. My blood chilled. Missing? Like Ethan, Lila? I wanted to scream, demand answers, but I just sat there, clutching the rope under the table. The diner's hum, clinking plates, low chatter, felt fake, like a mask over something disturbing. I'd run from danger, but it followed, in questions I couldn't ask. The cop left, promising to tow my van by morning. I stayed, nursing coffee, the rope a secret I didn't trust anyone with. Then I saw it, tucked in my bag, missed till now. A scrap of fabric, blue, caught on the zipper. Ethan's bandana, the one he wore surfing, faded but his. My heart stopped, the horror crashing back. It wasn't there before the dunes, I'd swear it. Had I grabbed it? Or had they left it? Like the rope, the buckle? I pictured him out there, caught, gone. Lila too, maybe. The tragedy was real now, no running from it. I stepped outside, dawn breaking, gray and thin. The cop's cruiser was gone, the street quiet. I walked to a motel, Ethan's bandana in my fist, the rope in my pocket. Checking in, I locked the door, sank to the floor. The chase was over, but not the fear. I'd survived, told myself I'd won, but at what cost? Ethan's laugh, Lila's shy smile, they haunted me, proof I'd failed them. The cop might find my van, maybe tracks, but not answers. Not the truth. The scary part was living with it, knowing I'd missed something, stepped wrong. I lay on the motel bed, staring at the ceiling, the bandana beside me. Cannon Beach was awake outside. Cars, voices, life. But I was stuck, replaying the fog, the whistles, those knots. My mistake was thinking I could outrun it, that solitude was safe. It wasn't. The ocean kept its secrets, and so did the dunes. I'd go back today, with the cop, look for Ethan, Lila, anything. But deep down, I knew, some things don't get found. The horror wasn't just out there. It was in me, in what I carried now. The phone rang, front desk, checking if I needed anything. I said no, voice flat. I thought of calling home, Boise, telling someone, but what? That I'd lost my friends, my nerve? Instead, I folded the bandana, tucked the rope away. The cop would call soon, or I'd walk to the station. I'd keep going, because stopping meant giving up. But the tragedy clung, heavy, final. Ethan's grin, Lila's eyes, they'd fade, but not the guilt. Cannon Beach was beautiful, cruel, its waves whispering truths I'd never unhear. I stood, splashing water on my face, the mirror showing someone I didn't know. The dunes were out there, waiting, and part of me wanted to face them, find what I'd missed. But the rest, the sane part, knew better. I'd escaped, but not whole. The disturbing weight of it all, rope, bandana, silence, was mine now, a scar no road trip could heal. I grabbed my bag, ready to move, but the terror lingered, a shadow I'd carry forever. Gravel crunched under my tires as I eased my van off the road, the engine sighing into silence. I'm Tessa Harlan, 31 years old, from Missoula, Montana. My home's this patched up, and I've been rolling in for 3 years, chasing quiet corners and open skies. Tonight, I'd parked near Oregon's Crater Lake, its deep blue water hidden in the dark beyond the pines. The air was sharp, smelling of sap and cold earth. I'd spent the day hiking trails, my boots still caked with dust. My friend, Jonah Kessler, was set to join me tomorrow. He's 34, a carpenter with a dry laugh and steady hands. I flicked on my string lights, their glow soft against the wood paneling. Felt good to be still, but something about the night was stirring, restless. I sank onto my bunk, the van's familiar creaks settling around me. The walls were lined with photos, Glacier, Zion, places I'd breathed free. Crater Lake was new, a bucket list stop, its cliffs and water almost too perfect today. Jonah'd love it. He's all about craft, would probably carve something from the driftwood I saw. I heated water for tea, the stove hissing low. My phone had no signal, not surprising out here. I didn't mind. Usually, being offline's half the point. But tonight, the quiet felt heavy, like a horror movie before the jump scare. I shook it off, blaming the long drive from Klamath Falls. The lake was out there, vast and black now, its surface catching moonlight. I'd parked in a turnout, no one around, just how I like it. Solitude's my thing, keeps me grounded. Still, something about this spot pricked my nerves, like I'd trespassed without knowing. I thought of Jonah's sister, Becca, 28, a nurse who's all heart, but no filter. She'd been with us last summer, cracking jokes by a campfire in Idaho. I wondered if she'd tag along tomorrow. I grinned, picturing her teasing Jonah about his beard. The tea steamed, warming my hands, but that uneasy vibe lingered, scary in its own vague way. I pulled out my journal, scribbling notes from the day, trail names, a sketch of the lake's rim. I'd stopped in Chiloquin earlier, grabbed a sandwich at a gas station. The clerk had eyed me funny, muttering about strange types around the lake. I'd laughed. Small towns love their myths. But now, alone, his words stuck, sharp and disturbing. I checked the locks, a reflex, though the van's solid. New deadbolts I'd installed myself. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling the dark was watching, pressing against the windows like it wanted in. Just tired, I told myself. Long day. The van's my haven, you know? Shelves of spices, a rug I wove last winter, a hammock chair I rigged for reading. But tonight, it felt small, the walls too close. I sipped my tea, the chamomile doing nothing for my nerves. Jonah'd probably roll in late. As usual, his truck rattling with tools. He's the reliable type, always has my back. I thought of calling him, but no bars, no point. The lake's silence was total, no crickets, no wind. That's when I heard it, a low thump, like something brushed the van. My pulse spiked, the horror of it sudden and real. I grabbed my flashlight, heavy duty, the kind you could crack a skull with. I laughed, nervous, telling myself it was a pine cone, maybe an animal. I flicked the beam outside, nothing but trees and dirt. No tracks, no marks. Still, I triple-checked the locks, my hands clumsy. Jonah called me jumpy, but he wasn't here. I climbed back to my bunk, curtains drawn tight. The lake was out there, beautiful but cold, like it knew something I didn't. I remembered Becca telling a story once, about a patient who swore he saw faces in the woods. Freaked me out then, Worse now. I tried to read, some beat-up thriller, but the words blurred. My mind kept circling that thump, the clerk's warning, the lake's eerie calm. I'd parked remote before, Badlands, Mojave, no issues. But Crater Lake felt different, like it was holding its breath. I pictured Jonah's truck pulling up, his headlights a relief. He'd break the spell, whatever it was. I wasn't scared, not really, just off, like when you hear a song and can't place the tune. The disturbing part was how much I wanted morning to come, fast. I turned off the lights, the dark swallowing everything but the faint glow of my watch. The van was quiet now, no more thumps, but my brain wouldn't quit. I thought of Becca, her nurse stories, people seeing things under stress, shadows that weren't there. Maybe that was me, hyped up from the road. Still, I kept my flashlight close, its way to comfort. The lake's pull was strong, even at night, like it was calling me to look. I didn't. I pulled my blanket tight, trying to sink into sleep, ignoring that nagging, scary whisper in my head. Last thing I did was check the skylight. Stars, faint through clouds, no movement. I was being silly, letting the dark play tricks. The van's my safe place, always has been. I told myself Jonah'd be here soon, everything be fine. Crater Lake was just a stop, another pin on my map. But as I drifted off, that thump echoed in my mind, a horror I couldn't quite bury. I closed my eyes, the lake's silence louder than it should have been, waiting for whatever came next. Dawn broke cold, Crater Lake's mist curling like smoke through the pines. I woke with a start, that thump from last night still rattling me. I'm Tessa Harlan, parked in this turnout, my van a stubborn island in the chill. I checked my phone, no signal, no word from Jonah. He's usually early, hauling his tools and coffee. Weird he hadn't texted. I stepped outside, the air biting my cheeks. The lake gleamed in the distance, too still, like it was keeping secrets. My van wouldn't start. Starter just clicked, dead. Great. I'd charged it in Missoula, thought it was solid. Now I was stuck, and that horror from last night was creeping back, sharp and unwelcome. I popped the hood, poking at wires like I knew what I was doing. Jonah laughed. He's the fix-it guy, rebuilt my alternator once. Me? I'm all thumbs with engines. The battery looked fine, but no juice. I cursed, scanning the empty road. No cars, no hikers, just trees and that lake, staring back. Then I saw it. Scratches on the van's door, thin and jagged, fresh. My stomach flipped. Not there yesterday, no way. Could have been a branch, but it felt wrong, disturbing, like someone left a mark just for me. That thump wasn't a pine cone, not anymore. Back inside, I boiled water, needing routine to steady me. The van smelled of damp wood and coffee, but it didn't feel safe now. I kept glancing at the scratches through the window, my flashlight still in hand. Jonah'd know what to do. Check fuses, maybe hotwire it. I pictured him shaking his head. Tessa, you gotta prep better. Guilty as charged. I had a map, paper kind, since GPS was useless. Klamath Falls was 30 miles south, too far to walk. Waiting for Jonah seemed smarter, but the scratches were screaming leave, their horror sinking deep. I sipped my coffee, pacing 4 steps across the van. The scratches weren't random, too even, like a blade. I told myself it was kids, vandals, but out here? Doubtful. I remembered a bar in Chiloquin, some guy rambling about weird lights near the lake. Drunk talk, I'd thought, but now it hit different, scary and real. My phone was a brick, no way to call Jonah or Becca. I needed a plan. Sit tight, hike out, or mess with the van more. None sounded good, not with that uneasy vibe growing, like the air itself was against me. An hour passed, no Jonah. The mist was thick, swallowing sound. I stepped out again, circling the van, looking for more signs. That's when I found it. A key, small, rusted, half buried near the tire. Not mine, not a car key. Looked old, like for a lockbox or shed. My skin prickled. Who drops a key out here? I thought of Becca. She'd probably say it's nothing, just litter. But it felt like a clue, something disturbing I didn't want to touch. I pocketed it, stupidly curious, and checked the road again. Nothing but pines and silence. I tried the van one more time. Click, click, dead. Frustration burned, but fear was right behind it. The key, the scratches, the thump, it was piling up, making me twitchy. I called out, "Jonah? You there?" My voice bounced off the trees, unanswered. Then I heard it. A snap, sharp, from the woods. Not a branch falling, Too precise. My heart kicked up, the horror of being watched slamming home. I backed toward the van, eyes locked on the pines. Nothing moved, but I felt it. Something out there, close, waiting. I locked myself in, curtains shut, breathing hard. The key sat on my table, glinting like it knew something. I grabbed my journal, sketching it to calm down, but my hands shook. I remember Jonah telling me about a job site once. Tools gone missing, footprints where no one should have been. He'd shrugged it off, but I couldn't. This felt like that, only worse, scary and deliberate. I checked my map again. There was a ranger station, maybe 10 miles west. Hikeable, but leaving the van meant risking everything inside. My home, my life. I decided to wait till noon, give Jonah time. Bad move? Maybe, but abandoning ship felt worse. I kept the flashlight close, heavy enough to hurt someone. The mist outside was thinning, but the lake's calm was eerie, like it was mocking me. I thought of Becca, her nurse gut. She'd check every angle, stay cool. Me? I was unraveling, jumping at every creak. Then it came again, another snap, closer, near the van. I froze, clutching the flashlight, the disturbing truth hitting hard. I wasn't alone, and whatever was out there wasn't friendly. By 11:30, I'd had enough. I packed a bag, water, map, key, flashlight, and locked the van tight. I'd hike to the ranger station, get help, call Jonah from there. The woods felt too close, their shadows long and wrong. The scratches burned in my mind, a warning I couldn't shake. Something scary was happening, something I didn't understand. I started down the road, lake on one side, pines on the other, moving fast. I didn't look back, but the feeling followed. Eyes on me, patient, ready for whatever came next. Pines loomed over the dirt road, their branches clawing at the sky as I hiked fast, Crater Lake's chill at my back. My bag bounced, the key in my pocket jabbing my thigh, a reminder of the scratches, the snaps, things piling up too fast. I kept my flashlight off, saving the battery, but every shadow felt alive, horror breathing down my neck. I pictured Jonah's truck rumbling in, his tools clanking, but the road was dead, no tire tracks, no hope. The air was too still, like the forest was holding something scary inside. I wanted to call out, check if I was alone, but my throat locked up. Something was out here, and it wasn't friendly. A mile in, I spotted something odd, a cloth strip, gray, snagged on a bush. I stopped, heart thumping, and nudged it with my boot. Looked like a torn sleeve, fresh, no dirt. Not mine, not Jonah's style. My mind flashed to Becca. She'd analyze it, maybe bag it like evidence. But out here, it felt like a marker, something disturbing left for me. I remembered a podcast Jonah played once, about hikers finding weird signs in the woods, cloth, carvings, stuff that didn't belong. Never explained, just creepy. I left the cloth, moving faster, the terror creeping up like a tide. The road curved, dipping into thicker woods. I kept thinking of the ranger station, picturing a radio, a map, someone to help. But the scratches on my van, that key, they weren't random, and the horror of it was sinking in. I'd laughed off that clerk in Chiloquin, his talk of strange types, but now I wondered, was this what he meant? I checked my phone, still no bars, useless. The snaps hadn't come again, but the quiet was worse, like a predator waiting to pounce. I thought of Jonah, his steady vibe. He'd say keep moving, so I did, even as fear gnawed my edges. Then I heard it, a low hum, faint, like an engine idling far off. My heart leapt. Jonah? I stopped, listening hard, but it was wrong, too heavy, not his truck. I stepped off the road, ducking behind a tree, my breath shallow. Felt paranoid, but the key, the cloth, they were screaming danger. The hum grew, then stopped. Silence, sharp and scary. I peeked out, nothing but mist and pines. Then a crack, like a branch breaking, not far. My skin crawled. Someone was close, moving careful, like they didn't want to be heard. The terror hit full force. I wasn't imagining this. I stayed low, gripping my bag, the flashlight heavy but useless against whoever was out there. My mind raced. Could be a hunter, a camper? But hunters call out, campers don't stalk. I thought of Becca's stories, patients swearing they saw things in the dark, shapes, eyes. I'd rolled my eyes then, but now I got it, the horror of knowing something's there, but not what. The crack came again, closer, deliberate. I backed deeper into the woods, pine needles muffling my steps. Whoever it was, they weren't random. They were tracking, and I was the target. I moved parallel to the road, heart hammering. The lake's glow faint through the trees. Then I saw it. A boot print, fresh, pressed deep in the mud. Too big for me, too clean for old. My stomach dropped, the disturbing truth landing hard. Someone had been here, maybe watching since last night. I remembered Jonah's job site story, footprints, missing tools, no answers. This was worse, way worse. I kept going, dodging routes, praying the ranger station wasn't far. But the woods felt like a maze, closing in, and that hum started again, louder, coming from the road I'd left. I froze, crouched behind a stump, as headlights swept the trees, slow, searching. Not Jonah's truck, too wide, too new. My blood chilled. The vehicle stopped, doors creaking open. Voices, low, clipped, two at least. I couldn't make out words, but their tone was wrong, sharp, like they were planning something scary. I thought of yelling, waving them down, but my gut screamed hide. The cloth, the print, the key, it was all connected, a horror story I'd stumbled into. I waited, barely breathing, as the voices moved closer, boots crunching toward the woods. They passed, maybe 20 feet away, their beams slicing the dark. I saw shapes, tall, heavy, one carrying something long, maybe a rifle. My chest tightened, terror locking my joints. I pictured Jonah, Becca, wondered if they'd come this way, seen these lights. The thought was a knife, twisting deep. The voices faded, heading toward the lake, but I didn't move, not yet. The station was my only shot, but the road was theirs now. I'd have to cut through the woods, risk getting lost. Something was clearly wrong, and I was running out of time. I stood, legs shaky, and started moving, deeper into the pines. The hum was gone, but the forest wasn't safe. Every snap, every rustle felt like a threat. I kept seeing that print, that cloth, my mind spinning worst-case scenarios. Were they after my van? Me? Something else? The scary part was not knowing, the pieces not fitting. The ranger station was out there, somewhere, and I'd find it, or die trying. I gripped the key in my pocket, its edges biting my palm, and pushed on, the woods swallowing me whole, hiding whatever was coming next. Branches tore at my sleeves as I plunged deeper into the pines, Crater Lake's shadow fading behind me. My flashlight was off, useless in the dark, but I gripped it like a weapon, the key in my pocket cutting into my thigh. Those voices, that rifle, they weren't random, and the horror of it pushed me forward, legs burning. I pictured Jonah's truck, hoped he'd be at the ranger station, but my gut knew better. The woods were a labyrinth, every tree hiding something scary, and the cracks of boots weren't far behind. This was survival now, raw and real. Run, hide, or face whatever was hunting me. I chose run, my breath ragged, the terror of fire in my chest. I tripped on a root, catching myself on a trunk, bark scraping my palms. The voices were closer, not shouting, just steady, like they knew I couldn't go far. I thought of Becca, her nurse cool, saying focus, breathe. Didn't help. The pines were thick, swallowing sound, but I heard them. 2, maybe 3, fanning out. My heart slammed, the scary reality hitting. They weren't guessing, they were closing in. I ducked under a low branch, mud sucking at my boots, and saw a glow ahead. Maybe a clearing, maybe the station. Hope flickered, but so did fear, because open ground meant exposure, and I was out of tricks. I hit the clearing, moonlight spilling over a rocky slope. Bad call. It was wide, no cover, the station still a guess in the distance. Headlights flashed behind me, that damn hum again, cutting through the trees. I sprinted across, stones slipping, expecting a shout, a shot. Nothing yet, but my luck was thin, horror clawing my throat. I dove into the next patch of woods, gasping, and crouched behind a boulder. The key in my pocket felt like a curse now, tied to the cloth, the prints, proof I'd stumbled into something planned, something disturbing. I had to keep moving, no matter what. The hum stopped, silence worse than noise. Boots crunched, deliberate, maybe 100 yards back. I pictured Jonah, his calm fixing my van, and clung to it. He'd fight, so I would too. I crept forward, staying low, the station's outline clearer now. A cabin, lights off, but real. My knee throbbed from the fall, slowing me, but stopping wasn't an option. A twig snapped, too close. I froze, breath caught, and saw a beam, flashlight, sweeping slow. Not mine. It grazed the trees, missing me by inches. The terror was total, like drowning on dry land. I had to outsmart them, or I was done. I bolted again, weaving through pines, the station so close I could smell hope. But the boots were gaining, one set now, faster, like they'd split up. I thought of Becca's stories, patients running from car wrecks, adrenaline keeping them alive. That was me, all instinct, no plan. Then I saw it, a wire, taut across the path, ankle high. I leapt, barely clearing it, my heart lurching. A trap, deliberate, scary as hell. They weren't just chasing, they were hurting me. The station was a trap too, maybe, but it was all I had. I pushed harder, lungs screaming, the cabin's door in sight. The door was locked, of course. I slammed my shoulder against it, wood creaking but holding. The boot stopped, somewhere in the dark, waiting. My flashlight was heavy. I could break a window, climb in, but noise would bring them running. I circled the cabin, finding a loose board, and pried it free, splinters biting my hands. The hum roared again, headlights sweeping the clearing I'd crossed. I squeezed through the gap, tumbling inside, the air stale and cold. The horror wasn't over. This place was empty, no radio, no help. Just me, trapped, with them outside, closing the net. Inside, I crouched below a window, heart pounding, the key digging into my leg. Papers littered the floor, maps, logs, nothing useful. The voices were back, low, outside the cabin, circling slow. I pictured Jonah, Becca, wondered if they'd reached this far, seen these traps. The thought was a knife, sharp and scary. A shadow passed the window, tall, rifle in hand. My blood froze. They weren't rushing, why would they? I was cornered, my only move to hide. Pray they missed me. But the cabin was small, and the walls felt like they were shrinking, the terror suffocating, real. I found a closet, barely a crawl space, and wedged myself in, pulling crates to block the door. My breath was loud, too loud, but I couldn't stop. The voices were at the door now, testing the lock, wood groaning. I thought of my van, my home, left behind with those scratches. My mistake was parking there, trusting the quiet. Now I was paying, the disturbing truth clear. This wasn't chance, it was planned, and I was the target. The door rattled, a boot kicking hard, and I gripped the flashlight, ready to swing, knowing it wouldn't be enough. The kick stopped, voices arguing, then fading, like they'd backed off. I didn't trust it. Hunters play tricks, and these weren't amateurs. I stayed put, every creak a threat, the key in my pocket my only clue, useless now. The station was a dead end, but so were the woods, the road, everything. I pictured Crater Lake, its calm a lie, hiding this nightmare. The scary part was the waiting, knowing they were out there, patient, ready. I had to move, find another way, before the trap snapped shut for good. Minutes bled into hours, my body cramped in the crawl space, the flashlight bruising my ribs. The voices hadn't returned, but Crater Lake's silence was no comfort, just a deeper horror waiting to break. I pictured Jonah's laugh, Becca's blunt advice, but they felt far, like ghosts. The key in my pocket was heavy, tied to the cloth, the traps, a puzzle I'd failed to solve. My mistake was waiting too long, thinking I could hide. I eased out, joints screaming, and checked the window. Nothing but pines and mist, the cabin a tomb. The terror clung, thick, but I couldn't stay. Staying meant giving up, and I wasn't there yet. I slipped through the loose board, back into the cold, the ranger station dark behind me. The woods were quiet, too quiet, like they'd swallowed the hunters whole. I moved fast, aiming west, guessing the road's direction. My knee was shot, every step a stab, but I thought of my van, my home, and kept going. The scary part wasn't just them. It was what I'd find or wouldn't. Jonah, Becca, had they come this way, hit that wire? The thought was a weight, disturbing and raw, pulling me toward answers I dreaded. A mile out, I found a trail, narrow, half-hidden. Hope flickered. It might lead to the road, a car, anything. But then I saw it. A glove, leather, crumpled in the dirt. Jonah's, the one he wore sanding wood, initials scratched inside. My heart stopped, horror flooding in. It wasn't old, wasn't lost. It was left, like the cloth, the key. I grabbed it, hands shaking, and looked around, expecting eyes, rifles. Nothing, Just silence, worse than shouts. My mistake was coming here, parking by that lake, thinking solitude was safe. Now Jonah was gone. Maybe Becca too. And I was holding proof. I ran, the glove stuffed in my bag, the trail blurring under me. The road wasn't far. I saw asphalt glint through the trees, a lifeline. But the hum started again, faint, from the direction I'd come. My blood chilled. They were back, or never left, playing me like prey. I thought of Becca, her nurse grit. She'd fight, stitch herself up if she had to. I tried, sprinting, but the hum grew, headlights cutting the mist. The scary truth landed hard. I wasn't escaping, not clean. The glove, the key, they were anchors, tying me to a tragedy I couldn't outrun. Headlights pinned me, the truck roaring close, no time to hide. I dove into a ditch, thorns ripping my arms, and lay flat, mud in my mouth. The truck slowed, voices sharp, 3 now, maybe more. They didn't stop, just crawled past, beams sweeping. I waited, heart pounding, the glove's leather smell mixing with dirt. The horror wasn't the chase. It was Jonah's glove, proof he'd been here, fought, lost. My fault for dragging him to Crater Lake, for picking that turnout. The truck moved on, but I felt them, circling, knowing I was close. I crawled out, ditch water soaking me, and hit the road, running blind. Klamath Falls was somewhere south. I'd hitchhike, find a cop, anything. Dawn was breaking, gray and thin, showing the lake's rim in the distance, cruelly beautiful. Then I saw it, glinting in the grass. Becca's necklace, a tiny shell she'd worn since Hawaii. My knees buckled, the tragedy real, crushing. I grabbed it, tears burning, and kept moving, the road my only guide. The disturbing weight of it all, glove, key, necklace, was mine now, a chain I'd never break. A car appeared, an old sedan, slowing as I waved, frantic. The driver, gray hair, wary, let me in, asking what happened. I mumbled about a breakdown, showed Jonah's glove like it explained anything. He nodded, driving toward town, radio crackling with weather. I clutched the necklace, the key, my hands bloody from thorns. The police would listen, maybe search, but I knew. Crater Lake kept its secrets, like it had Jonah, Becca, maybe others. The horror wasn't over. It was in me, in what I'd lost, what I'd carry. Klamath Falls emerged, gas stations and diners, normal life mocking my night. The driver dropped me at a station, said to stay safe. I nodded, numb, the glove and necklace in my bag, the key in my fist. Cops would ask questions, check the lake, find my van, maybe. But the truth? That was gone, buried in pines and mist. My deadly mistake was trusting the quiet, thinking I could wander free. The scary part was living with it. Jonah's laugh, Becca's grin, gone, and me left holding pieces, a tragedy I'd never escape. I stood outside the station, sun rising, Crater Lake out there, silent, waiting. The van was lost, my home. But worse was Jonah, Becca, their absence a wound. I'd tell the cops everything. Key, glove, traps, let them dig. But some things don't get found, not really. The horror was mine now, a shadow no road could shake. I walked inside, ready to start, knowing I'd never finish. Crater Lake had won, its beauty a lie, and I was the one left to pay.